What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 6 Decigrams Chapter 106. Invasion Hueco Mundo, have you ever been hit by a meteorite? Chapter 106 Invasion Hueco Mundo, have you ever been hit by a meteorite? This solution. Nene's mouth twitched slightly, his forehead was covered with black lines, and he looked towards his bedroom speechlessly. He was ready to be scolded. Unexpectedly, during the time he was sleeping, the two women actually solved the matter by themselves. According to Tear Haribel, Rukia Kuchiki was furious when she saw herself and Yunohana Retsu sleeping in bed, and rushed in with her soul-slaying sword. Then, Yunohana Retsu carried her like a chicken to the basement of Urahara's store. After learning the ins and outs of the matter, the two women made an agreement that as long as Rukia Kuchiki defeated Yunohana Retsu in the future, Yunohana Retsu must leave Niah. What happened afterwards was that Rukia Kuchiki was severely beaten up. Silly girl. How can you possibly beat Sister Wa? She was once a great villain and mastered 8,000 sword techniques. Kie looked at the figure in the room speechlessly. Completely played by Sister Wa, poor little girl. Tear Haribel gloated and said sarcastically, "How about it? You are in trouble now, let's see who you will take care of first." Kie looked at her with a dark face. "This maid, go and make me a cup of green tea right now." O3 Tear Haribel. The silver teeth bit and creaked, but Tear Haribel finally snorted and walked towards the kitchen of Kurosaki Hospital. "I can't deal with Yunohana Retsu, but can't I deal with you?" Kie snorted proudly. Beside her, Nilu blinked her eyes and asked curiously, "Kie, is mating really comfortable?" 2. The next day, Urahara store Urahara Kazuki, Tessai Tsukabishi, Kurosaki Ichigo, Shihuan Yoruichi, Sui-Feng. Looking at the two women beside Niah in astonishment. Yunohana Retsu, the captain of the 4th Division, was dressed like a married woman at this moment, standing beside Niah with a smile. Her left hand was still holding Niah's arm. Rukia Kuchiki was not to be outdone, and although her face was red with shame, she still held Niah's other arm. It seemed to be claiming sovereignty. Several people were dumbfounded, and Urahara Kazuki silently gave Niah a thumbs up. Awesome. So awesome. On the left is the Shinigami captain, and on the right is the daughter of a nobleman. Enjoying the blessing of two people, double happiness. This seems to have never been determined in the history of Soul Society. Ahem, don't look at me. Let's talk about how to rescue Inoue classmate. Niah coughed twice and said righteously. According to Captain Sui-Feng, some captains of the Seirei will invade Hueco Mundo with us, right? Urahara Kazuki came back to his senses, nodded, and said in a deep voice. Yes, they have gone there now, do you want to go there too? Of course. Niah's Rinnegan fluctuated slightly, and he said lightly, but I don't need to go through the gate to go there. He can actively activate the transcription seal in Inoue Orihime's eyes, pass through the Kamui space, and come directly to Inoue Orihime. Next, don't follow me, I'll go there alone, Niah said. Inoue Orihime must be imprisoned in the Palace of Night, and if he goes there, there will definitely be a fight, and he won't be able to take care of others at that time. Of course. Mainly, he wanted to escape from the range of Shira Field. Then let's go. Urahara Kazuki quickly finalized the plan. We invade Hueco Mundo through the gate, and Tien Yi will go to Hueco Mundo by himself. After a moment, in the eyes of everyone, Kie looked at the space in front of him and said lightly. Kamu. The space gradually twisted in a spiral shape. Chi Yoruichi stepped into it and found the Kamui space full of three-dimensional columns. After waiting for Kie to leave, everyone present was busy. Shihuan Yoruichi, in the form of a black cat, flexibly jumped onto Yunohana Retsu's shoulder and said with interest. Captain Yunohana Retsu, if I remember correctly, you should be more than 790 years old this year, right? Yunohana Retsu looked over with a smile and said dangerously in her eyes. Miss Yoruichi, what's the matter? Shihuan Yoruichi was not threatened at all, and smiled. Captain Yunohana Retsu, at your age, you still attack Niah, isn't it too embarrassing? Rukia Kuchiki nodded frantically beside him. That's right, Miss Yoruichi, if you say a few more words, you will scold this hundreds of years old vixen fiercely. Yunohana Retsu's smile became brighter. Ms. Yoruichi, your eyes are too small, so you don't understand. This is love. Love has no age limit. Shihuan Yoruichi curled his lips. Nonsense, your situation is illegal in the world. It's called an old cow eating young grass. Sui-Feng followed and echoed. Ms. Yoruichi is right, you bad woman. Yunohana Retsu smiled even brighter, slowly pulled out her soul-slaying sword and said, Ms. Yoruichi, I heard that you were called Flash Goddess Yoruichi. How about it, do you want to spar with me? Shihuan Yoruichi curled his lips and said, glad to accompany you. Boit. In Kamui space. Kie sneezed heavily, rubbed his nose, and looked behind him with lingering fear. I always have a bad feeling. Fortunately, I ran fast, otherwise it would be a torture to stay in that environment. Forget it, let's bring Inoue Orihime back first, otherwise it will be too embarrassing. The space twisted in a spiral. Chai stepped out and saw Inoue Orihime with a confused look. "Hey, Inoue, I'm here to pick you up." Kie smiled and said hello. Inoue Orihime was stunned for 2 seconds, then her beautiful eyes widened, showing a surprised expression, and she ran over in 2 steps. "Kie, are you here to save me? Or am I here to make a cameo appearance?" Kie complained in his heart, and smiled and rubbed Inoue Orihime's hair. Yes. Inoue Orihime hugged Kie tightly, with a little crying in her voice. "I knew that Kie would definitely come to save me. You must be very worried. I'm sorry." "Oh, I should say sorry." Kie's shame surged in her heart again. "When you were captured, I was still having S*X with Unohana Retsu. Just now, I was suffering in the Shura field. Don't worry, I'm here, you're safe." Kie rubbed Inoue Orihime's hair, and said in a deep voice. "Stand behind me, leave it to me next." After saying that, Kie narrowed his eyes and looked at the surrounding environment. When he saw the figure in the distance, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Boundary? No, it is a large-scale sealed Bakudo. He was in a white palace, with countless black lines on the wall, bursting with spiritual power fluctuations. There are many 890 lines among them, and Kie can tell what Kido it is. Bakudo 36, Bakudo 48, Bakudo 74, and Triple Barrier Technique, N99 Bakudo. With a sneer, Kie looked at the figure at the door of the room and said, "It's really a big deal. This level of seal may be able to forcibly imprison the captain." At the door, Neutra, who had recovered, was furious. He carried an 8-shaped sickle and looked at Kie with murderous intent. "Human, you can't run away. This is the sealed space created by Master Aizen for you. Be sealed here obediently." At this point, Neutra seemed to have figured something out and sneered. "With your human lifespan, it will be at most 100 years. After 100 years, I will personally unseal you. By then, you will only have your soul left. At that time, I will let 100,000 Manos Grande come together to bite your soul body. Ha ha ha, maybe you will degenerate into a new Manos Grande, ha ha ha." Thinking of the wonderful point, Neutra couldn't help laughing. While he was talking, the black lines in the room suddenly lit up, and various Kido and barriers were formed. There were golden javelins, blue light locks, and huge stone pillars falling from the sky. But the most terrifying thing was the white bandages. The bandages all over the sky were like living lions' majesty quickly wrapped around Nanaya's body. "Not good, look over there." The Shinigami who invaded Hueco Mundo with the first 7 Yoruichi steps looked at the sky of the distant Hueco Palace in shock. The spiritual power of various Kido almost took shape. However, facing this level of forced suppression, Nanaia sneered, looked at Neutra, and said, "Have you ever been hit by a meteorite?" Chapter 107. Tengai Shinsei, the Burning Meteorite Planet. Chapter 107 Tengai Shinsei, the Burning Meteorite Planet. Meteorite. Neutra was stunned for a moment, then laughed and looked at Kie with ridicule. "Human, are you scared, silly? What can a meteorite do to me, idiot? I am Neutra Gilga, ha 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 ha." Neutra laughed and said loudly, "Pray, holy weeping mantis." The powerful Reiatsu burst out, and he turned into a 6-armed posture again, holding 6 8-shaped sickles in his hands, and said, "Human, despair, since you came to save that stupid woman, you have fallen into the abyss of despair, and you can't escape." As he spoke, the Kido in the room was fully activated. The dazzling light flashed, countless rays, and Kia's body was firmly imprisoned, and Kia's figure could no longer be seen. All that could be seen was a stone tablet. The golden lock wrapped around the stone tablet. The white bandage attached to the stone tablet. 5 stone pillars smashed on the stone tablet. The golden light sheet pierced under the stone tablet. Bakudo 99 Forbidden, Bakudo 61 6-staff light prison, Bakudo 75 5-pillar iron pipe, Bakudo Great 10 main lock bar lock worker. How many kinds of Bakudo are there? Using so many high-level Bakudo, are they dealing with the Captain General? No, the Captain General didn't come in at all. Could it be that human travel disaster Naniah? The seal is about to be formed. The Shinigami who invaded Hueco Mundo were horrified. They had never seen so many Bakudo, and they could not imagine the power of these Bakudo combined. As that guy an idiot, Kuretsuchi Mayuri held a syringe filled with green solution in her hand and looked over there impatiently. If we wait for these Bakudo to start, even the Captain General may not be able to escape. Zaraki Kenpachi laughed loudly, holding the soul-slaying sword and said, "It's just right, I'll fight my way through and save that guy by the way." Byakuya Kuchiki snorted coldly and said, "Stupid guy, for a woman, he actually put himself in such a dangerous place." While speaking, he thought of his sister Rukia Kuchiki. Could it be? This is a mistress, 46 kinds of Bakudo. A seal created specifically for me. This is really, I am so terrified. Under the stone tablet, in the dim environment, Nanaya's eyes suddenly burst into a strong purple light. Hands crossed, index finger and middle finger together. He shouted, "Complete form Susanoo." Instantly, blue flames ignited around Nanaya's body, and blue bones gathered in the flames, forming the Susanoo Titan in an instant. Because there are 6 Arankar Manos Grande in the body. or the existence of six-tailed beasts, Susanoo is particularly powerful this time. He forcibly stretched out dozens of high-level bakudo. The surrounding barriers continued to collapse, extending cracks. Noitra was startled and took 2 steps back. He quickly calmed down and sneered. Ryutsu is so strong, but it's completely useless. This is the seal performed by Master Aizen himself. In front of the blue Susanoo, Nanaya's gesture remained unchanged, and the blue Susanoo behind him also made the same gesture. So, Tengai Shinsei, with Nanaya's loud shout. An unparalleled sense of oppression came from the sky. Noitra noticed something and looked up. Suddenly, the whole person froze in place, and his pupils suddenly shrank to ultimate. Wait, is that a burning planet? Huh, what? Why is it dark? No, why is it red? The many Shinigami who had just entered the Palace of the Night looked at the surrounding light in confusion, looked at each other, and then looked up at the sky. It doesn't matter if you look at it. Hundreds of Shinigami took a breath of cold air. I watched the sky, burning with fire, a huge red meteorite that covered the sky and the sun, slowly falling down. It was so huge that it completely covered the sky. The originally grand and majestic Suya Palace, in front of this huge meteorite, seemed particularly small, like the difference between gravel and the bright moon. They could clearly feel their own insignificance under this meteorite. It made people despair, fear, and even kneel on the ground. Hey, isn't this too exaggerated? Kuretsuchi Miyuri widened his eyes. He was originally fighting with the 8th Espada among the Espadas, Zael Aporo, who was also a mad scientist, and he couldn't help but stop at this moment. Zael Aporo also stopped and looked at the boundless meteorite with cold sweat on his forehead. Ha, such a big meteorite, I wonder if I can cut it off. Zaraki Kenpachi looked at the meteorite enthusiastically, his Reiatsu soared into the sky, and he stepped on the ground and flew directly under the meteorite. Kusajishi Yachiru looked at Naniah helplessly, pouted his lips, and said dissatisfiedly, Shao Naniah is like the captain, both like to use large-scale attacks. Yachiru hates this. Byakuya Kuchiki also stopped his action, frowned and looked at Zaraki Kenpachi who was rushing towards the meteorite. That idiot. And his opponent, the 7th Espada Zamari Ruro, also stopped his action, looking at the meteorite in shock. Can a meteorite of this level be chopped and blocked? The Shinigami and hollows present are not weak, but at this moment they are a little doubtful about life. If it were an ordinary meteorite, they would not take it seriously at all, because any hollow sword. But the meteorite falling in the sky, it is called a meteorite, but it is more like a planet burning with fire. Just looking at it, you can feel a heavy sense of oppression. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Zaraki Kenpachi rushed to the meteorite and slashed it fiercely. A crack was cut into the meteorite, but that was all. With the meteorite's size that covered the sky, this degree of crack was just a drop in the bucket. Open black lens bracket 014501503 Filu 182,461,191. With a collision sound, compared to the meteorite, Zaraki Kenpachi, who was the size of a sesame seed, smashed into the Kiyonyaku Palace with a bang, spitting blood from his mouth. The impact of this thing is so strong. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes were fanatical. At the moment of collision with the meteorite, he felt that the impact of the entire film and television acted on his body, almost shattering him. Idiot! Byakuya Kuchiki cursed again, and then shouted in a deep voice. Quick, leave this area quickly, don't be hit by the meteorite head-on. The ordinary Shinigami finally reacted, their scalps tingling, they put away their soul-slaying swords, and ran out of the Kion Palace. They were afraid that if they were a step slower, this place would become their graveyard. The Mainos Grande at the scene were stunned for 2 seconds, and after they reacted, they all screamed and howled, and followed the Shinigami to run away. They were all rational Mainos Grande, and they also didn't want to die under the meteorite. Quote, Noitra looked at Kie in fear, and no longer had the idea of revenge in his heart. He was the 5th Espada, representing the way of death as despair, and his favorite thing to do on weekdays was to give others despair. Therefore, the release language of his soul-slaying sword was, Pray, holy weeping mantis, because you only need to pray when facing despair. But in front of Kie, he, the 5th Espada who represented despair, felt fear deep in his heart. He couldn't help but take a step back, and after reacting, he was furious and couldn't tolerate that he was afraid. But if there is a first step, there is a second step. He suppressed his fear, gritted his teeth, and followed the other Shinigami and hollows, running desperately out of the Kion Palace. Can you escape? Naniah looked at his running back coldly. This was also his newly awakened ability, pulling a burning planet from space. This move alone cost him 50% of his spiritual power. No, I can't escape. Kuretsuchi Miyuri stopped first, looking in Naniah's direction with a sullen face. Damn human, do you want to kill us all together? Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this attack was indiscriminate. The sky gradually darkened. The meteorite that covered the sky and the sun slowly touched the ground. Boom! In just a moment of contact, the huge Kion Palace collapsed. The earth cracked, spreading countless cracks. The wall was directly shattered by the shockwave, and the strong wind swept in all directions mercilessly. Chapter 108. Karakura Town, the Creation King Key. Chapter 108. Karakura Town, the Creation King Key. Ah! The screams echoed in the strong wind. Under the powerful shockwave of Tengai Shinsei, ordinary Shinigami and Manos Grande below the level of Ajukas had no resistance at all. Blown by the strong wind, they flew into the air like dandelion seeds. Looking from a distance, it was a scene of flying people. No, we have to block it, Byakuya Kuchiki shouted loudly. If this meteorite really fell, he might be fine, but ordinary Shinigami, I guess none of them would survive. I know, I told you a long time ago, don't let these trash come with you. Kuretsuchi Miyuri looked at the ordinary Shinigami with disgust. But he still drew out his soul-slaying sword, pointed it at the meteorite in the sky and said, Bankai. Golden Hijisha Jizo. The biological soul-slaying sword, with a baby face, looks extremely weird, golden caterpillar, appeared out of thin air, roaring. Go. Block it. Kuretsuchi Miyuri pointed at the meteorite in the sky, not caring whether his Bankai could withstand it. Golden Hijisha Jizo roared, and stared at the sky with violent eyes. Then, it was stunned for a moment, it couldn't help but look down at Kuretsuchi Miyuri. Kuretsuchi Miyuri also looked at it, and said with a sullen face. Why, as my soul-slaying sword, you don't even listen to my orders. Golden Hijisha Jizo screamed, with a look of death in his eyes, squirming his body, and fiercely crashed into the meteorite in the sky. Byakuya Kuchiki and Zaraki Kenpachi also took action. The former used Bankai, the latter, despite being seriously injured, burst out a stronger golden Ryatsu. The Manos Grandes in the distance did not dare to continue to run away. Because the range of the meteorite is too large, no matter how they run, they can't escape. Simply gritted their teeth and rushed forward. Ulquiorra drew out his soul-slaying sword and said indifferently. Seal it, Black-Winged Demon, second stage return to the blade. In an instant, under the premise of the first stage return to the blade, Ulquiorra's posture changed again. The clothes on the upper body disappeared, black liquid flowed from the eyes, the lower part of the tear marks was too, and the white of the eyes turned green. The abdomen to the legs, arms and back were covered with black feathers, and the wings were fully opened, revealing bat-like claws. The horns on the helmet became longer and sharper upwards, and a black tail grew out, with a bone object similar to a knife at the tip, sharp claws on the feet, and the hollow hole became larger, and a black pattern appeared from the hollow hole to the abdomen. Released an extremely terrifying Ryatsu, as if there was an ocean above the sky. The surrounding environment seemed to have turned green, and there was a patter of rain in the sky. Seeing Ulquiorra's changes, Neutra, Zale Aporo, Zamari and other Espada Manos Grande were all shocked. That guy actually developed a second stage return to the blade. Neutra's face was extremely ugly, because in his opinion, Ulquiorra's Ryatsu at this time was not even weaker than the second Espada Baragan Luisenbaron. But he couldn't say anything now, so he had to draw out the soul-slaying sword and said. Pray, holy weeping mantis. Zale Aporo, Zamari also returned their soul-slaying swords to the blade when they saw this. Sip. Evil concubine, calm down, curse-eyed Sangha. The appearance of the two also changed dramatically. The former's lower body turned into tentacles, which then condensed and disappeared, turning into feet in the hem of his clothes, with 4 wings growing from his back and colorful patterns on his eye sockets. The latter's face and jaw had black patterns, and his lower body turned into a peach pumpkin shape, floating off the ground, with up to 50 eyes on his body. They all looked extremely inhuman, with a creepy and hideous feeling. With all the strong men working together, the meteorite that had already touched the ground was constantly cracked and shattered. Gradually, the cracks spread to the entire meteorite. Seeing this scene, Hiei touched his chin on the complete form of Susanoo and said. Well, if I tell you that there is another meteorite in space that is about to be pulled down, will you go crazy? Byakuya Kuchiki, Kuretsuchi Miyuri, Zaraki Kenpachi, Ulquiorra. Everyone present looked at Hiei as if they were looking at a devil. There is another one. After they released their spiritual veins and sensed the second meteorite that was about to fall, their scalps suddenly tingled and their eyes widened. The second meteorite in the dark space was only bigger than the one in front of them. It deviated from the track, it crashed straight towards this side. Byakuya Kuchiki's face turned black, and while controlling the sakura flowers in the sky, he said, Hiei, are you going to kill us while killing these hollows? If there is a second meteorite falling, he feels that he may be seriously injured. Hurry up and move your damn meteorite away. Kuretsuchi Miyuri gritted his teeth and said, it's just to deal with these 2 Manos Grande, there is no need for this ability at all. If there hadn't been a meteorite that suddenly fell, he felt that he had already dealt with Zale Aporo. Ah, at sea, I know. Hiei sighed and dispersed the gravity that attracted the meteorite. The second meteorite that was about to fall in the darkness floated back into space and returned to its own orbit. After doing all this, Hiei looked at the strong man who was struggling to resist the first meteorite and couldn't help but sighed. Now I finally know why old man Yamamoto doesn't want to use Bankai, because this destructive power is really a bit limited. One of his Tengai Shinsei blasted the entire Kyono Palace into pieces. If old man Yamamoto completely Bankai, without considering the consequences, the damage caused would definitely be much greater than Tengai Shinsei. I'm afraid that the entire Seirei will be destroyed. At the same time, in the present world, Karakura Town. A huge black crack suddenly appeared in the cloudless blue sky. The crack was huge, and the inside was pitch black. Manos Grande with hideous appearances kept pouring out of it, like demons from hell. In addition to the Manos Grande who went ahead, the more powerful Arankar also walked out later. They were the first Espada Coyote Stark, the second Espada Baragan Louisenbaron, the sixth Espada Grimjow Jägerjackes, the 10th Espada, which can also be called the third Espada Fang. As these four people walked out, two figures finally walked out of the black crack. Aizen Sōsuke and Ichimaru Jin. Looking at the city below, Aizen Sōsuke smiled and said, "This is it, 100,000 human souls, and a heavy spiritual land with a radius of 1 soul." The former king of Hueco Mundo, Baragan snorted, sat on the bone throne created for him by his subordinates, and asked lightly, "Aizen, although the spiritual power here is a little stronger, there is nothing to worry about. Why do you make all those preparations to come here?" Ichimaru Jin next to him saw his posture, and a trace of ridicule flashed across his smiling fox face. As the former king of Hueco Mundo, even the throne was taken away by Aizen Sōsuke, but he still put on this ridiculous king's posture. It's so ridiculous that anyone can see the ugliness under this appearance. Aizen Sōsuke didn't care about Baragan's attitude, staring at the city below, and said, "As long as this city is refined, the king key to the Soul King Palace can be created, which is the key to open the Soul King Palace. For this reason, Hueco Mundo is no longer important. As long as it can hold back some of the power of Soul Society, it will be fine." Baragan's face darkened and he said, "So, Aizen, are you going to give up Hueco Mundo?" Although his expression was angry, he was very happy in his heart. If Aizen Sōsuke returned to the Seirei, the position of king of Hueco Mundo would still be his. As for Stark, who was stronger than him, he didn't take him seriously at all. After all, that guy's personality was particularly lazy. Even if the position of king of Hueco Mundo was given to him, he would definitely refuse it on the grounds of trouble. Aizen Sōsuke smiled and didn't answer Baragan's words. Ichimaru Jin's eyes were a little solemn. He knew Aizen Sōsuke's purpose. This guy had always regarded Hueco Mundo as a springboard. A springboard to the Soul King Palace. Once he invaded the Soul King Palace, the whole world would cease to exist. However, before the Creation King key, Aizen Sōsuke looked around and said with a smile, "We still have to meet old friends first, for example. Captain General, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Chapter 109. Above Karakura Town, Aizen Sōsuke attacks. Chapter 109 Above Karakura Town, Aizen Sōsuke attacks. Bakudo number 26 bent light. A steady voice came from the sky, and at the same time, there was the sound of a cane hitting the ground. A sound like a broken mirror rang out. A large number of Shinigami strongmen from the Seirei appeared out of thin air in the four directions of Aizen Sōsuke and his group. Everyone looked at Aizen Sōsuke with cold eyes. Aizen Sōsuke didn't care. He smiled and looked at Karakura Town under his feet, and said, "This is the conversion technology of the Technology Development Zone, right? Hide the environment originally in the real world and create a new city in the original location. Only by breaking the four-sided barrier here can the original city be pulled back. It's really a good battlefield." Ignoring Aizen Sōsuke's words, Kyoka Suigetsu frowned and asked, "Aizen, you appear here, then Niah and the others. Are they still in Hueco Mundo?" He originally thought that after Aizen Sōsuke appeared, Niah would also come to the battlefield with his strange ability to support this side. After all, Niah's fighting power is still very strong. Kurosaki Ichigo, Unohana Retsu, Sato Yasutora, Nilu, Tier Harabel, Add Byakuya Kuchiki and others. Equivalent to the captain level fighting power of 8 or 9 people, it is enough to affect the trend of the entire battle. Hearing this, Aizen Sōsuke smiled and said, "Kyoka Shinsei, you are also corrupted, and you actually have to seek help from human power. It's just a bigger grasshopper. He got a little strength by chance, but he is just a weakling in the end. He should be in a very bad situation now." Thinking of the seal he left in the Kyonaku Palace, Aizen Sōsuke's eyes flashed with a gleam of light. That kind of powerful seal is enough to kill the first Espada Coyote Stark. He felt that Niah would not be able to escape no matter what. Kyoka Shinsei's heart sank. He didn't expect that Niah had been ambushed. Old man Yamamoto snorted coldly, knocked the sky with his cane, and said in a deep voice, "Kyoka Shinsei, shut up. Even if that naughty kid doesn't come, this war won't change." Captains such as Kashiwamura Sajin and Hitsugaya Toshiro nodded silently. With the captain here, even if 7 Yoruichi and his companions are not here, they don't think Aizen Sōsuke will succeed in his goal. Kyoka Shinsei could only smile bitterly. He didn't expect that he was attacked by 2 parties just by mentioning 7 knights. He simply shut his mouth. The atmosphere returned to silence, but it seemed particularly depressing. It was as if the calm sea surface when the tsunami came could raise a huge wave of 10,000 meters at any time to swallow everything. In this atmosphere, Sui-Feng took the lead in taking action, raised his soul-slaying sword, aimed at Aizen Sōsuke, and said coldly, "Captain, capture the thief first. Should we kill him first?" Hearing this, Grimjow put his hands in his pockets, leaned forward, looked at Sui-Feng with disdain and said, "Don't talk big, you ch." The first Espada, the young subordinate officer next to Stark, drew out the soul-slaying sword with a bad temper. "Stark, these Shinigami are too arrogant, do it quickly, I want to kill all these damn Shinigami." Stark scratched his hair and said lazily, "Lynette, no one else has done it, just let me rest for a while." He is the first Espada, representing the way of death as loneliness, and is the only two strong men who can do Arrancar on their own without the help of Hōgyoku. Because of loneliness, he chose to join the Kyōnyaku. But his personality is very lazy and he hates fighting, so he doesn't want to be the first to do it. Seeing his appearance, Lynette punched him. "Stark, how can you be so lazy?" Stark nodded lazily, but still didn't choose to be the first to do it. Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes lit up, as if he had found a fellow traveler, and he couldn't help but look at Stark. Prepared to go fishing with this guy next. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting more and more tense, but no one chose to take action, old man Yamamoto finally couldn't help it. He took a step forward in the sky, he said in a deep voice. "All of you retreat." The faces of many Shinigami in the sky changed, and they retreated without hesitation. After the last battle between the captain and Niah, they clearly knew how destructive the captain's Ryūjin Jakka was. The aftermath alone was enough to seriously injure them. Seeing all the Shinigami retreating to a distance, old man Yamamoto snorted coldly and hit his cane heavily. Fire burst out, high temperature scorch. The wooden cane melted into flames and turned into the ancient soul-slaying sword again. All the Arrancar Manos Grande present looked over, they also wanted to know how strong this strongest Shinigami was. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, old man Yamamoto held the sheath with his left hand and the handle with his right hand, slowly pulled out the blade, and said at the same time, "Everything will return to ashes, Ryūjin Jakka." In an instant, violent flames filled the sky, and the rolling flames rushed towards Aizen Sōsuke like a sea of fire. "What a grumpy old man," Stark complained, put his hands in his pockets, and used the unique ring of Manos Grande to leave the place in an instant. "This level of fire is unstoppable." Grimjow's face changed, and he also saw the gap between himself and old man Yamamoto. All the figures of Manos Grande retreated quickly, fearing that they would be attacked by the fire first. But Aizen Sōsuke and Ichimaru Jin in front of them did not move at all. "Let the violent flames surround them. It's so hot, Captain Aizen," Ichimaru Jin said with a smile. "What should I do? Should I deal with the captain first?" 0. Asking for flowers. Aizen Sōsuke's expression was normal, and he smiled and said, "No need. We have won." After old man Yamamoto put his sword back into the sheath, the depressing atmosphere was finally destroyed by the fight. Both sides rushed towards each other with murderous intent. Among them, a black figure flew up from below at a very fast speed and instantly came to a female Arrancar Manos Grande. The person who came was Shihoin Yoruichi. She looked at Manos Grande in front of her with cold eyes, and then turned to look at Aizen Sōsuke in the flames. "Aizen, what do you mean by what you just said? How is that guy Niah?" Aizen Sōsuke smiled and said, "It's Miss Yoruichi. I didn't expect that you, as one of the four nobles of Soul Society, would care so much about a human being." Shihoin Yoruichi's eyes flashed with cold light, and he directly attacked the female Manos Grande in front of him. But in his heart, he was a little worried about Niah. 0. No one knew the horror of Aizen Sōsuke better than her. This guy was so smart that he calculated the entire Soul Society. At the beginning, there were as many as 7 or 8 captains and vice-captains who fell into the void in his hands. Compared with such a monster, Niah really seemed a little immature. After all, he was just a high school student, 16 years old. "Don't die, brat." At the same time, Niah, who was called a brat, was sitting on the wreckage of the Hueco Palace, watching the attacking Manos Grande with interest. "Interesting, they really tricked me. I don't know what means Aizen Sōsuke used to make the space of Hueco Mundo tremble and be particularly unstable. Shinigami can't create a gate here, he has no way to enter the Kamui space." "Niah, are you okay?" Inoue Orihime looked at Niah with some concern. "It's okay." Niah shook his head, stretched, looked at Ulquiorra, who was attacking the fastest, and said, "Although old man Yamamoto is arrogant, conceited, and arrogant, his strength is still good, at least he can delay for a while." As he spoke, Niah stretched out his right index finger, pointed it at Ulquiorra and said, "Hollow Dog Cannon." The spiritual power of the 6-tailed beasts in his body surged and merged into Niah's index finger to form a black sphere. Seeing this scene, Ulquiorra threw his weapon without hesitation, a javelin condensed with green spiritual power. Thunder Spear. The black sphere was extremely fast and collided with the Thunder Spear in midair. Boom! A thunderous sound echoed in the sky. The hollow dog cannon formed by the spiritual power of the 6-tailed beasts instantly swallowed Ulquiorra's Thunder Spear. Seeing such a horrifying scene, even though the way of death was nothingness, the usually indifferent Ulquiorra changed his face. There is actually such a powerful Sero River. Chapter 110 Tails Chome, the ninth Espada Araniero Ururueri. Chapter 110 Tails Chome, the ninth Espada Araniero Ururueri. Returning to the blade is equivalent to Shinigami's Shikai. The second stage of returning to the blade is equivalent to Shinigami's Bankai. Because of this, Ulquiorra, who was originally the fourth Espada, has reached the level of the second Espada after the second stage of returning to the blade. Maybe he can even fight with the first Espada Coyote Stark. However, his Sero was blocked. Ulquiorra's expression was solemn, and he turned his body to the side and touched the shockwave of the hollow dog cannon with his hand. He tried to use this to estimate Kai's current strength. However, it was only in an instant. Ulquiorra's dark, devil-like palm was torn apart by the shockwave. He can even tear my steel skin apart. Is this guy really a human? Ulquiorra ignored the arm torn by the shockwave and looked at Kie with a solemn look. Even as indifferent as he was a little skeptical about life. I even doubt whether Niah is actually human. A race that is as fragile as an ant in the real world and can only exist under the protection of Shinigami can actually give birth to a monster that can tear its own arm. 3 threes. With the thought, Manos Grande's high-speed regeneration was activated. The torn demon claws were restored to their original state at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this time, Zael Leporo and Zamari also rushed up and launched their strongest attacks on Niah without hesitation. The former spread out multiple tentacles with mucus attached, and swung them at Niah's body like a whip. The latter glared at Niah's body with more than 50 eyes at the same time, and invisible Ryatsu acted on Niah's body. Disgusting. Niah took a breath. Why are your attacks so disgusting? Can't you learn from Ulquiorra? One mucus, one wink. It's like a yellow PN, but it's horror-oriented. Just looking at it makes people want to vomit. You know, even villains have their own style. For example, Ulquiorra, although also a villain, is not an evil person at first glance. As for these two, their attack methods alone show that they are unforgivable. They are evil villains who must be killed in anime. Facing such disgusting attacks, Kie didn't even want them to get close to him. With a cold light flashing in his eyes, he said in a cold voice. Amaterasu. Flame control. The two long-lost pupil techniques were activated again. First, a little black spark burned, and then in the next second, it exploded and turned into an endless black sea of fire. The attacks of the two were ignited by the black flames, and they had to jump back. After forcing the two back, Kie turned his eyes and stared at Ulquiorra, who was like a demon in the second stage of the return to the blade. With a smile on his lips, Taguchi said, quote, Ulquiorra, compared to these two guys, I admire you more. What do you think? Do you want to be my son? After saying that, Niah blinked and quickly changed his words. No, do you want to be my subordinate? After watching One Piece too much, when recruiting subordinates, I can't help but recruit sons. Not far away, Byakuya Kuchiki's eyelids jumped, and he had an ominous premonition in his heart. Want a son so much? Rukia, isn't she pregnant? Ulquiorra's expression was still indifferent, and he said lightly, Lord Aizen's order is for me to stay in the Palace of the Night and kill all invading enemies until he comes back. Really? Quote. Niah shook his head with some regret, and then said, then there is no way, I hope you don't die next. After saying that, Niah looked at Byakuya Kuchiki in the distance and said in a deep voice, brother-in-law, leave here quickly, I will not distinguish between friend and foe from now on. Quote. Byakuya Kuchiki frowned. What are you going to do? Don't do unnecessary things. Aizen Sōsuke and the others are not in Hueco Mundo. They are either in Soul Society or in the real world. We have to go over and support them. Quote. Kie didn't answer him, and turned to look at Kuretsuchi Miyuri and said, hey, the pervert scientist over there, don't just stand there, hurry up and study how to leave Hueco Mundo. Kuretsuchi Miyuri's forehead was bulging with blue veins, and he gritted his teeth and said, human kid, my name is Nozuli, the captain of the 12th Division, not a pervert scientist, and you are not qualified to order A. Hey, can't you do it? Kie raised the corner of his mouth, interrupted him, and said in surprise, Urahara Kazuki can send us in, but you can't even let us leave. No wonder Urahara Kazuki looks down on you. It turns out that your research level is not high at all. That's no wonder. When Urahara Kazuki was in the Seirei, he was the captain of the 12th Division, and you were just a vice captain. I really overestimated you. Shut up, kid. Kuretsuchi Miyuri was so angry that he was about to explode, veins on his forehead bulged, his cheeks twisted, and he roared angrily. My level is much higher than that guy, I just didn't have the opportunity before. So, did you do it? Niah looked at Neri with a smile. He was not worried that Kuretsuchi Miyuri would refuse, because for Kuretsuchi Miyuri, Urahara Kazuki was his inner demon. As long as he said that he was not as good as Urahara Kazuki, even if he knew it was a provocation, this guy would agree under the emotion of anger and jealousy. As expected, Kuretsuchi Miyuri roared angrily, it's just a stable space, give me some time and I can do it. Good. Kie nodded with satisfaction, and the purple Rinnegan fluctuated slightly, finding an Arrancar Manos Grande hidden under the ruins. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he stretched out his hand and said, Universal pull. under the influence of the strong gravity. Wearing a white robe, with a glass jar on his neck, and 2 arancars floating inside, the extremely weird Manos Grande was pulled up alive. It was one of the Espadas that had never shown up from beginning to end, the 9th Espada, Araniero Ururueri. It was also the only arancar among the Espadas that evolved from Jillian. It was the guy he hated the most among the Espadas. Araniero, who was forcibly pulled out, made a sharp sound, and the 2 in the glass jar arancar looked at Kie angrily. Damn human. How did you find me? Have you ever hidden yourself? Kie looked at him coldly, and didn't want to say any more nonsense, and stretched out his right hand to him. Damn it. Aranilo roared, and his appearance suddenly changed into that of a male Shinigami, and stretched out his right hand to Kie and shouted. Hado 4 White Thunder, the white lightning attacked Kie. In response, Kai's expression was indifferent, but the invisible repulsive force burst out, and shattered the lightning. Then, he began to chant in a cold voice. The military minister is 8 inches, and there is no reason to retreat. Blue bolt, white bolt, black bolt, red bolt. Bite each other and sink into the sea. The gate of the dragon's tail, the gate of the tiger's bite, the gate of the tortoise's armor, the gate of the phoenix's wing. Bakudo 96. 4 beast gates. As Nanaya's chanting ended, a huge barrier was formed in the air, with a total of 4 gates, firmly imprisoning Aranilo inside. Aranilo attacked the 4 beast gates frantically. But with Nanaya's current strength, or the Kido that was fully chanted, with his strength as the 9th Espada, he could not shake it at all. Damn human, why did you lock me up here? Aren't you going to kill me? Aranilo roared angrily. Nania retracted his hand and looked at him coldly. You will definitely die, but the person who kills you should not be you. The Espada Manos Grande in front of him is the most despicable one among the Espadas. He does all kinds of evil and does whatever it takes. He is simply guilty of heinous crimes. Decades ago, he killed Rukia Kuchiki's boss Shiba Kaien with extremely despicable means. His 5.7 Shinigami posture is the appearance of Shiba Kaien. This matter has always been a thorn in Rukia Kuchiki's heart. Nania thinks that Rukia Kuchiki should kill him personally. Maybe after Rukia Kuchiki gets revenge, she will be happy and forgive herself for cheating. Thinking of this, Nanaya's mood became cheerful, and he didn't bother to pay attention to Aranil's roar. He licked his lips and said, It's time to gather the next tailed beast, the 7th tails beast. 7 tails Chome. At the same time, Kurosaki Ichigo, Rukia Kuchiki, Unohana Retsu, Sado Yasutora, Ishida Uryu, Nilu, Tyr Haribel. Finally passed through the Manos Grande forest and came to the ruins of the Kyūya Palace. Looking at the giant meteorite towering into the sky, the few people who were ready for battle stopped and were stunned. Kurosaki Palace. Is it like this? Kurosaki Ichigo asked stupidly, turning to look at Nilu and Tia. You used to live in a place like this. Chapter 111. Furious Battle, killing the 7th Espada Zamari Ruro. Chapter 111. Furious Battle, killing the 7th Espada Zamari Ruro. How could you live in such a place? Did you get your head chopped off and become stupid? Tyr Haribel looked at Kurosaki Ichigo with a bad look. The former Kyūya Palace, although not as comfortable as the Seirei, was magnificent in scale and had a visual shock that surpassed Soul Society. Looking at the front again, it was completely a ruin. There was a battle, and this meteorite was the product of the battle, and there was also the Ryatsu of Nania on it. Unohana Retsu said gently. Her face inexplicably turned red, and she subconsciously tightened the soul-slaying sword in her hand. Chianye, he has become stronger again. Rukia Kuchiki's face darkened, and she quickly said, Captain Unohana Retsu, please calm down, but in Hueco Mundo. If she wasn't strong enough, she would have wanted to beat this bad woman who stole her man away. Unohana Retsu smiled and said nothing. After going through so much trouble, they finally found a crack on the meteorite and walked into it along the crack that could be called the Grand Canyon. Going deeper and deeper, gradually, they heard roars from inside. At the same time, there were bursts of metal clashing. Are you still fighting? Kurosaki Ichigo's face changed, and he pulled out the crescent moon quick blade from his back and went forward. The others hurriedly followed. After suddenly seeing the light, they were stunned for a moment, confused by the scene in front of them. The center of the battle was filled with a faint golden light, which was particularly dazzling. Looking closely, it was surprisingly countless phosphorus powder. A figure could be vaguely seen in it, shuttling through it at a very fast speed. The ones fighting with it were surprisingly 4 Arankar Manos Grande, all of whom had released their return blade postures, but were still panting from being beaten. As this, Nania Hollow, Kurosaki Ichigo looked at the phosphorus powder in doubt. With his vision, he could vaguely see that the figure in it was wearing a white and red mask, and 4 pairs of skill period wings grew on his back. Every time it flashed, the scales on the wings would fall off. Ha ha ha, is that the extent? Nania in the hollow state, with fanatical and violent eyes, holding a black stick, constantly attacking the 4 Arankar Manos Grande. In a flash, the black stick scratched Ulquiorra's arm. Ulquiorra's face changed, and his figure quickly retreated. He glanced at his arm and said coldly, Don't be touched by that weapon, otherwise there is no way to recover. He is the only Arrancar Manos Grande in Espada who still has high-speed regeneration. But after the black stick scratched his arm, the power of Shinigami and Hollow remained on it, and the ability of high-speed regeneration was invalidated. Neutra, Zail Aporo, Zamari, the three Arrancar Manos Grande looked livid. Damn human, they have lost their reason, but they are still so difficult to deal with. Neutra couldn't help cursing. They didn't know what Niah's current state meant. But it was obvious that Niah could no longer use his weird ability and could only use pure weapons to attack. But the aggrieved thing was that even such Niah beat them to pieces. As Kai's figure flashed again, his body came behind Zamari. The arm covered with white substance, like a white demon, pierced through his heart before the other party turned his head. Ah! Zamari screamed in pain, and dozens of eyes on his body kept opening and closing. Even so, he did not die. He struggled to use Shangzhuan, and his footsteps continued to move, and 5 more clones appeared around him. Da! Kie, who was in the hollow state, had violent eyes and laughed loudly, and instantly captured one of them. Dit! The arm pierced through the other party's chest again. There was a tearing sound, and the chest full of eyeballs was directly torn open. Zamari screamed again and again, but this time, he no longer had the ability to escape, and could only watch his chest bleeding. Impossible. Speed. How could it be so fast? How did you sense my true form? Dozens of eyes looked at Kie in disbelief, with despair and fear in their eyes. But at this moment, Kie only had the instinct to fight, and with a wave of his right hand, Zamari's body was thrown out directly. It all seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. When Ulquiorra and Arrancar Manos Grande were just about to come to support, they found that Zamari had fallen down. At the same time, the scales behind Kie flapped, and released a sky of scale powder on them. Zail Aporo screamed, covering his eyes and retreating quickly. Damn, this damn phosphorus powder, my eyes. Ulquiorra and Neutra also had to retreat. The faces of both of them were a little ugly. The phosphorus powder released by Kie in the hollow state has the ability to cover vision and even blind their senses. It's nerve-probing and resounding, Ulquiorra said coldly. He didn't use the spirit vein and Shunpo, but the ability of the hollow, and it's much stronger than Zamari. Hearing this, Neutra and Zail Aporo almost had the urge to kill. He was obviously a human, but now he had the mask of the hollow, and even used the ability of the hollow that was born from instinct. This feeling made them so frustrated that they went crazy. Others used their own abilities to deal with themselves, but they couldn't beat them. Not far away, Zamari looked at the sky in despair, and the Ryatsu fluctuations on his body had decayed to ultimate. Lord Aizen, I'm sorry. As the 7th Espada among the Espadas, he represents the way of death as intoxication, and has the fastest, resounding, among the Espadas. He is also the Manos Grande who admires Aizen Sōsuke the most and is the most loyal to Aizen Sōsuke. I didn't expect that he would die in the hands of humans. Feeling that Zamari had lost vital signs, the remaining 3 Arrancar Manos Grande felt nervous. They didn't expect that a companion would die so soon. Although their feelings were weak, they also felt a sense of grief at the moment. Is this a continuation of the previous battle with the Manos Grande in the body? Kurosaki Ichigo finally reacted. His scalp suddenly numbed, and he rushed away without hesitation. He knew that during this stage of fighting with the Manos Grande in the body, there was no rationality, and the fight was all based on instinct. Ah, Niah, in this state, you have become so strong. Unohana Retsu bit her lower lip and looked at Niah's figure obsessively. Her cheeks gradually became redder and redder, like an O*******, M, and she couldn't help but walk towards the center of the battle. Wait, Captain Unohana Retsu, please calm down. Rukia Kuchiki jumped up and quickly hugged Jinohana Retsu. She didn't dare to let Unohana Retsu get close to Niah. You know, the last time Unohana Retsu took advantage of Niah's fatigue after the battle, 890 Overlord forced the bow and ate Niah. While stopping Unohana Retsu, Rukia Kuchiki also looked at Niah angrily. Why do you want to fight with the hollow in your body at this time? That's because there is plenty of spiritual energy here. He also said that when he controls the Manos Grande in his body, his strength will become stronger. 014501503 Filu 182,471,101. Byakuya Kuchiki came over and said lightly. After looking at a few people, Byakuya Kuchiki said in a deep voice. According to Niah, Aizen Sōsuke should be confident that he can defeat the Captain General. For this, he must become stronger. Captain General? That old man will be defeated. Tear Haribel looked at Byakuya Kuchiki in surprise. She was once the 3rd Espada, and her strength was also among the best in the Palace of Night. At the same time, she also saw the battle between Niah and the Captain General. She could feel the horror of the old man even more. The Ryūjin Jakka in his hand, the suppressed boundless flame, was enough to destroy the world. Byakuya Kuchiki glanced at her, and his mood was inexplicably heavy. I don't believe it either, but I always have an ominous premonition in my heart. After all, Aizen Sōsuke is very dangerous. Logically speaking, Aizen Sōsuke will not fight without preparation. Aizen Sōsuke spent hundreds of years to achieve today's situation. Many captains were plotted by him, either hollow or defect. It is enough to see the danger of Aizen Sōsuke. Such a dangerous guy must have taken the captain into consideration when he chose to take action. Thinking of this, Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't help but look at Niah, who was fighting frantically, and murmured. You said that after you defeat the Manos Grande in your body, your strength will be greatly improved, so. How much can it be improved? Chapter 112 Peak War, Hueco Mundo vs Jinglingding. Chapter 112 Peak War, Hueco Mundo vs Seredi appearing in the world, above Karakura Town. A large number of Shinigami and Arrancar Manos Grande are fighting each other. Kido, Zanhendao, Sero, Guiron. Various abilities emerge one after another on both sides, making this war extremely fierce. However, although it has become like this, the strong men of both sides did not take action. The majority of those who took action were vice-captains and subordinates of Espada Manos Grande. But it is obvious that Hueco Mundo's side fell into a disadvantage. Seeing this scene, Baragan, who was sitting on the bone throne, snorted coldly, patted the bone throne with his right hand, and said in a deep voice. Since Aizen is surrounded by flames, let God end this war. As he said, he crushed the decorative skull on the bone throne, and his figure slowly stood up, bursting out a trembling Ryatsu. Seeing this, his two subordinates changed their expressions and half knelt down without hesitation. Your subordinates deserve to die, Lord Baragan. Your subordinates will go and deal with them right away. Please wait for a moment and wait for your subordinates' good results. Hearing this, Sui-Feng looked at Baragan, a sneer appeared on his face, and said, You are such a boaster, ridiculous guy. Baragan glanced at his subordinates, then at Sui-Feng and Omeda behind her, slowly sat back, and said lightly. Don't let even an ant go, otherwise, the losers will not come back, don't let me down. As he spoke, he raised his right hand and said in a cold voice. I want our guy to be stained with the blood of the enemy on the road. At this point, Baragan's momentum rose instantly, and he shouted. Answer me, whose subordinates are you? The two subordinates of Arrancar Manos Grande answered loudly without hesitation. Yes, we are subordinates of His Majesty the Great Baragan Luisenbaron. We will crush all the enemy forces. You will enjoy the beautiful scenery of blood and flesh flying and dyeing the battlefield red. Sui-Feng raised a cruel sneer at the corner of his mouth. On the other side, Kyoka Suigetsu and Jashiro Yukitake, the two found Coyote Stark, the first Espada. The latter scratched his hair, put his right hand on the hilt, and said nonchalantly, Well, I have no interest in fighting, after all, I am born like this. As he said, he looked at the two people opposite. So, can we pretend to fight, and then, absent-mindedly, wait for others to finish fighting? Jashiro Yukitake frowned. What are you talking about? Great. Kyoka Suigetsu interrupted. Jashiro Yukitake hid his face in the darkness, clapped his hands and said, Not bad, I also feel that this is good, after all, I have been very tired during this period. Perhaps you don't know, there was a little human who turned our soul society upside down before, and even moved the sticks. Because of that little ghost, I was not only injured, but also had no rest for a long time. At this point, Kyoka Suigetsu raised his head, his eyes became unusually serious and said, But, only this time can't be muddled, at least it's like this on our side 89. This battle, or war, it's about the life and death of two worlds, or it can be said that it's about the life and death of three worlds. Even he must take it seriously. Really, Stark sighed, slowly pulled out the soul-slaying sword at his waist and said, It's really troublesome, on another battlefield. What, why is my opponent a little ghost? Is there no stronger guy in the Seredi? The sixth Espada Grimjow, standing in the sky, with his hands in his pockets, leaning forward, looking at the two people opposite with dissatisfaction. It was Hitsugaya Dashiro and his vice-captain Matsumoto Rangaku. Hearing this, Hitsugaya Dashiro snorted and said lightly, Manos Grande, I heard that you were defeated by Niah. With this kind of strength, how can you be arrogant? Hearing Niah's name, Grimjow's eyes were full of anger, looking at Hitsugaya Dashiro with cheetah eyes, and said, Little ghost, I hope your strength is as strong as your mouth. The ominous premonition is getting stronger and stronger. In the ruins of the Hueco Palace, Byakuya Kuchiki sat on a piece of meteorite, his face cold, but looking at the sky with some uneasiness. The sky of Hueco Mundo is different from Soul Society, it seems very depressing even during the day. It is exactly what he thought at this time. Zaraki Kenpachi, with a bandage on his chest, didn't care at all and said carelessly, What's there to worry about? After I leave, I must chop those bastards hard. As he said that, he couldn't suppress the fighting spirit in his heart, and looked at Niah with fiery eyes. I really want to fight him. At this time, Niah's body has completely transformed into a tailed beast, showing the posture of a big fluttering moth. Flying in the air, every time he flaps his wings, he will bring a blanket of phosphorus powder, covering the surrounding environment. Due to the existence of phosphorus powder, the three Arrancar Manos Grande fighting Niah are miserable. From time to time, they are hit by Niah who is coming fast, and they are beaten to vomit blood. They can only stand up and continue to resist Niah's attack. Because they found that they can't escape at all. In this form, Niah has unimaginable speed. Don't go over there, Do you want to be seriously injured by that guy? Byakuya Kuchiki said coldly. Tisk. Zaraki Kenpachi curled his lips and pointed to the other side unhappily. If you have time to take care of me, you might as well take care of those two women. Hearing this, Byakuya Kuchiki, a cold-faced gentleman, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He looked over there, and he felt even more helpless. Because over there, Rukia Kuchiki and Yunohana Retsu, the two women were confronting each other, and the former was almost gritting her teeth at the latter. Rukia, what's wrong? Yunohana Retsu pointed to the four beast gates in the distance and said with a smile. That's a gift from Niah for you. He is very considerate. He knew that guy was your enemy and sealed him in the barrier on purpose. I'm a little envious. Niah has never been so gentle to me, every time he hurt me all over. Speaking, Yunohana Retsu rubbed his shoulders sadly. Last time, he bit my shoulder, and it hurts a little now. Rukia Kuchiki's eyes were blazing with fire. When she saw Yunohana Retsu's shoulder, she gritted her teeth and said viciously. No, if I go to take revenge on that B**********, you will definitely take the opportunity to find Niah, right? Niah is mine. When he dies, we will get married when we come to Soul Society. Yunohana Retsu laughed and said, how about I marry him before he dies? No. Rukia Kuchiki looked at Yunohana Retsu angrily. Alas. Byakuya Kuchiki shook his head involuntarily. Captain Yunohana Retsu has lived for hundreds of years and is a black-bellied woman. How could her silly sister be able to play with her? But it's not easy for me to care about it. After all, it involves a love affair between a man and a woman. Damn human kid. As expected. After a while, Rukia Kuchiki still couldn't suppress his hatred for Erinal. He glanced in the direction of Niah and prayed in his heart. Nana, you have to hold on to your hollow attitude for a little longer, don't let this bad woman get it. After praying, Rukia Kuchiki's eyes gradually became cold, and he drew out his soul-slaying sword and strode towards the blue dragon gate of the four beasts. Yunohana Retsu's eyes moved, and she stopped provoking and said, little girl from the Kuchiki family, fighting in such a small place is not good for you, you'd better be careful. If you can't beat it, you can withdraw first, and I can teach you the skills of Bankai. With your current Ryatsu, as long as you are given a chance, maybe your Soda no Shirayuki can awaken and master Bankai. Chapter 113. Mask Broken, Eight Tails Gyuki. Chapter 113 Mask Broken, Eight Tails Gyuki, UK. Outside the gate of the Four Beasts Gate, Rukia Kuchiki looked at the figure inside with a complicated expression. Although he knew that it was Menos Grande of the Ninth Espada, his appearance at this time was the once amiable Shiba Kaiyan. But soon, Rukia Kuchiki made up his mind and stepped into the barrier of the Four Beasts Gate. Rukia, long time no see. Erinilo pretended to be Shiba Kaiyan and greeted Rukia Kuchiki with surprise. The latter's face was ugly, and he held the soul-slaying sword tightly, and said in a cold voice, damn guy, you are not allowed to speak like Captain Kaiyan, it is an insult to him. Don't say that. Erinilo still smiled, raised his leg and walked towards Rukia Kuchiki, with a hint of fierceness in his eyes. Glancing at the human boy who was holding down three Arankar Menos Grande outside the barrier and clearly had the upper hand. He knew he couldn't be that guy's opponent, but if he caught Rukia Kuchiki and used her as a hostage, maybe he could escape. Thinking of this, Erinilo smiled brighter while holding Shiba Kaiyan's face. But the next second, I told you not to talk to me with Captain Kaiyan's face. Rukia Kuchiki looked at him angrily, her spiritual power rising, and she directly released her soul-slashing sword. Dance with the spirit Soda no Shirayuki. Soul Society's most beautiful blade was presented, the snow-white blade slashed down, and with a swish, the cold air surged, and Erinilo's face changed drastically. He looked at the wound on his arm angrily, where blood was flowing. But the bright red liquid was quickly frozen by the ice. The smile disappeared, and Erinilo looked at Rukia with a cold face, and said in a cold voice, Rukia, do you want to kill me 10 more times? Hearing this, Rukia Kuchiki couldn't help biting her lower lip, feeling extremely painful and entangled in her heart. At the beginning, Shiba Kaiyan, her captain, was swallowed by a Menos Grande that could be fused, and took the initiative to collide with her soul-slaying sword. Although it was Shiba Kaiyan who took the initiative to seek death, she was entangled and painful for a long time. Even though she knew that the person in front of her was a hollow, not the former Captain Kaiyan, it was not that Kuchiki Luki could not kill him. Erinilo was too lazy to say anything more, he knew that he didn't have much time. If he waited for the monster to finish the battle and regain his sanity, then there was only one way to die waiting for him. Thinking of this, Erinilo directly pulled out the Zanhun sword at his waist and used the Shikai that once belonged to Shiba Kaiyan. Taguchi said, let the water and sky roll back, Nejibana. After the Zanhun sword was released, it turned into a nearly 2-meter trident with a spiral cone at the end. As it was swung, waves of spirit water were generated around the trident, creating a surging water flow and a surging wave. The two stepped on their feet and rushed towards each other quickly, and the swords and tridents collided continuously. The sound of metal clashing was endless, but it was obvious that Rukia Kuchiki fell into a disadvantage. Her Ryatsu and strength were far inferior to Erinilo. Even so, Arenilo still held Shiba Kaien's face and kept talking, affecting Rukia Kuchiki's fighting power. Rukia, think about it, I took care of your class, Addy, but you killed me. I'm really in pain, don't resist, this is the retribution for you killing me. That guy has a good relationship with you, right? I really don't want to kill you, please, let me catch you and leave here. Listening to the constant voices, Kuchiki's heart was also in turmoil, and her left shoulder was accidentally cut by the trident. Blood dripped on the ground, staining the ground red. In pain, Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth, took a step back, and cut Soda no Shirayuki on the ground. First dance moon white. The ground cut by the blade was bright with a lavender light, revealing a cold chill. As Arenilo stepped in an instant, the cold chill penetrated the sky and the earth, forming a giant icicle. Half of Arenilo's body was frozen by the ice. What's the use of this thing? Looking at the icicle that froze him, Arenilo sneered, swung the trident, and with the violent water flow, directly blasted the icicle into pieces. Rukia Kuchiki had to retreat. At the same time, he stabbed the Soda no Shirayuki blade into the ground continuously, changed several directions, stopped and shouted. Siwu Bai Lien. The several places stabbed by the blade released powerful cold air like an avalanche. It's useless to say it, don't waste my time, I don't want to be killed by that monster. Arenilo looked at Rukia Kuchiki angrily, swung the knife, and cut off the oncoming cold air in the water flow. The seventh Espada Zamari had already died at the hands of Niah, and he didn't want to be the second one to be killed. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became, and the more panicked he became. On his body, the tyrannical Ryatsu erupted. His head turned back into a glass jar, in which two hollow masks were soaked, which was particularly weird and disgusting. He roared to the sky and shouted. Eat him up, Goku. The moment the voice fell. Like other Arrancar Manos Grande return blades, his appearance also changed dramatically. The upper body maintained its original form, while the lower body changed into a huge, ugly, purple octopus-like terrifying form. I have devoured 33,650 Manos Grande's ninth Espada, Rukia Kuchiki. Now I have the power of more than 30,000 troops. Arenilo looked crazy. Then he turned into the image of Shiba Kaien, and said with a gentle smile. Rukia, don't resist, take me out of this barrier, I am the captain, don't let me be killed by that monster. Rukia Kuchiki was sweating profusely, and he aimed Soda no Shirayuki at the opponent with difficulty. The Arenal trident swung and hit him. Bang! With the heavy sound of the collision, Rukia Kuchiki's figure was directly slapped away, and rolled 7 or 8 times on the ground before he barely stopped. No, Rukia, you are not this guy's opponent. Unohana Retsu's voice came from outside the barrier. Kurosaki Ichigo, Sato Yasutora and others also looked at Rukia Kuchiki with worry. They wanted to go in to help Rukia Kuchiki, but the barrier set up by Niah only allowed Rukia Kuchiki to enter and exit freely. DX. Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth, stood up with difficulty, used Shunpo, and came to the edge of the barrier of the Four Beasts Cold Gate. Areniluo's face suddenly changed, and he hurried, but in the end he was still a step behind. He watched Rukia Kuchiki leave the barrier. Rukia, come back quickly, I don't want to be killed by that monster, come back and save me quickly. Arenilo roared unwillingly. 014501503 Filu 182,471,391. Even though he has entered the return blade posture now, he still cannot shake the barrier left by Kie. He can only be helpless and furious in the barrier. Unohana Retsu ignored his voice, helped Rukia Kuchiki up, looked at her and said, how about it, do you want to learn Bankai from me? You are only one step away now. Rukia Kuchiki was a little entangled, gritted her teeth and asked, why do you want to help me, shouldn't you go find Yi? Well. Unohana Retsu glanced at Niah and said gently, if you get hurt, I think Niah will be very sad. Hearing this answer, Rukia Kuchiki was a little discouraged. This bad guy really hasn't given up Niah, but should I agree? Asterisk greater than. Just as Rukia Kuchiki hesitated. In the distance, Niah, who was fighting with 3 Arrancar Manos Grande, suddenly stopped, and the white and red mask on his body suddenly shattered. Suddenly, except for Ulquiorra, the faces of the other 3 Arrancar Manos Grande were wasted. There was a sense of instant vision that the sky was falling. If this monster regains his sanity, all the hollows present will die. But they don't know that this state was created by Niah on his own initiative, in order to control the tailed beasts he created. The several Manos Grande present are just whetstones. After the 7 tails Chomei's posture disappeared, a new mask appeared on Niah's face again. The spiritual power of the hollow burst out, stronger than before. Behind it, a tail like an octopus tentacle appeared, and the number is still increasing. It turned out that Niah was devouring the spiritual power of Hueco Mundo, and created the 8th-tailed beast after 7 tails Chomei in his body. 8 tails Gyuki. The war broke out again, but this time, the 3 Arrancar Manos Grande felt the pressure, which was stronger than before. Seeing this, Rukia Kuchiki finally made up his mind and looked at Unohana Retsu with a firm gaze. Captain Unohana Retsu, I want to learn Bankai. Nana is also fighting hard and getting stronger in the hard fight, so why shouldn't I become stronger? Moreover, I have made an agreement with Yuno Hanaretsu that if I don't defeat her, I won't be able to take Niah back. For revenge, and for Niah, I must learn Bankai and become a captain-level strongman. Chapter 114. Killing the 7th Espada Zale Aporo Grants. Chapter 114. Killing the 7th Espada Zale Aporo Grants. Bankai is the second stage of Zanpakuto's liberation in the final form of Zanpakuto. It can liberate and use Zanpakuto's abilities more thoroughly and comprehensively. If you want to learn Bankai, you must first materialize Zanpakuto and get the real name from the soul-slaying sword. Yuno Hanaretsu carefully taught Rukia Kuchiki. As a strong man in Soul Society second only to Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, coupled with hundreds of years of experience, she has a deep understanding of Bankai. The skills she taught are also very useful, allowing people to communicate with the soul-slaying sword in battle. Kuchiki Rukia was fascinated by what she heard, and the ryatsu on her body kept boiling, like a blue flame rising and then being suppressed. It seemed that she was accumulating strength and could ignite everything with the fire of spiritual power at any time. In the distance, Zaraki Kenpachi was lying on the meteorite fragments, curling his lips and saying disdainfully, "Bankai. There is no need for that kind of thing. If you want to defeat the enemy, just chop him down." Byakuya Kuchiki's face darkened and he said, "Do you think everyone is a monster like you?" Among the 13 captains of the Seirei, only Zaraki Kenpachi did not master Shikai or Bankai. He fought with the instinct of a beast, but this guy's ryatsu was extremely strong. Even if he didn't know Bankai, he had a captain-level battle record. Kusajishi Yachiru stuffed a piece of konpeito into his mouth and muttered, "The sword itself is already very strong, and there is no need for Bankai." "That's right." Zaraki Kenpachi waved his soul-slaying sword and laughed. "Bankai is the most boring thing. It's more comfortable to chop people with a knife. Blood and pain." "Captain Zaraki, please be quiet." Yuno Hanaretsu interrupted Zaraki Kenpachi's laughter and looked at him with a smile. It was a very gentle smile, but it made Zaraki Kenpachi shudder all over and subconsciously closed his mouth. "That's about it. This is all the experience I got from someone." After Yuno Hanaretsu finished telling all the skills, she looked at Rukia Kuchiki and said with a smile, "Don't spread it out. This is a taboo among taboos. If ordinary Shinigami don't learn it, they may die." Rukia Kuchiki nodded quickly. She also knew the danger of these skills. Although Shinigami's use of Bankai will improve their combat effectiveness, it is also a great test for the Shinigami's own spiritual power. If the spiritual power is not enough to support Bankai, it may even drain his own spiritual power to death. But she is still a little curious. Where did Captain Makino Hanaretsu learn such a precious skill? "I know, thank you, Captain Yuno Hanaretsu." Rukia Kuchiki stood up and bowed respectfully to Yuno Hanaretsu. But then, Rukia Kuchiki clenched her fists again and said firmly, "But, Niah can't give up to you, the captain. I will definitely defeat you." Yuno Hanaretsu nodded with a gentle expression. She is the greatest villain in the history of Soul Society, mastering 8,000 sword techniques, and had learned Bankai hundreds of years ago. Even if Rukia Kuchiki learned Bankai, she has absolute confidence that she can defeat him. "Rukia-chan, Niah-kun can't let you have it all to yourself, that's too selfish." Yuno Hanaretsu's cheeks gradually turned red, and she couldn't help but look in the direction of Niah. Looking at the fierce battle, she couldn't help but clench the soul-slaying sword. "Ah, I really want to fight. I really want to feel the pain of the blade cutting through my body." Rukia Kuchiki didn't notice Yuno Hanaretsu's expression changed. Holding the soul-slaying sword, full of confidence, he walked into the four-beast gate again. At the same time, roar. With a roar from Niah, he came to the critical moment of fighting against the eight-tails Gyuki in his body. The appearance changed dramatically. Like the return of Manos Grande, it completely transformed into a tailed beast. The whole body was light brown, and the lower body was similar to an octopus with 8 huge tentacles. The upper body was similar to a giant bull, with 2 high horns, which looked particularly terrifying, hideous, and violent. There were also hollow masks and hollow holes on his body, which exuded the evil and darkness that belonged to the hollow. "No way." Zale Aporo took 2 steps back, looking at Niah in horror at this time, and finally couldn't bear it anymore, and collapsed and shouted. "What's going on? This guy is obviously a human. Why does he have such a terrifying Arankar Manos Grande in his body? He is the 8th Espada, who is in he ranks last among the Espada. If he hadn't studied various technologies and fully utilized his life-saving skills, he would have died at the hands of Kie in the 7-tails state. But even so, it has reached the limit." Jinping roared in collapse. "Not one, but 2, both are Vastad-level Manos Grande. How is this possible? I have never seen the appearance of these 2 guys. And it's not scientific at all. Why don't the 2 Manos Grande in his body conflict? These 2 monsters are obviously stronger than me, and they will definitely fight in this human body. Are they one and the same?" Neutra didn't expect that his collapsed nonsense happened to describe the situation in Niah's body. Although the tailed beasts created are all independent individuals. But due to the existence of Rinnegan, all tailed beasts are like puzzles, and the meaning of existence is just to create 10 tails. In the distance, Kurosaki Ichigo pitied them for 2 seconds. These Manos Grande probably don't know that there are more than 2 Manos Grande in Niah's body. There are already 8 that have appeared, and they are all Vastad level Manos Grande, and as the number of tails increases, the strength is still increasing. 0. Please give flowers. 7 tails and 8 tails was enough to suppress all the Manos Grande that appeared before the bed rose. Because Shiyelaporo's voice was too loud, Niah, who had completely transformed into a tailed beast, lowered his head and caught him with his violent eyes. Damn it! Shiyelaporo roared in collapse, and aimed his hands at Niah to launch the final attack. Flash of Wang Shu. The purple light flashed and turned into a dazzling purple Sero. Boom! The Sero bombarded the tentacles of 8 tails. However, when the smoke and dust dissipated, only a small area of 8 tails' tentacles was charred, and it was not seriously injured at all. Without waiting for Shiyelaporo to attack again, 8 tails octopus tentacles, like whips, bombarded Shiyelaporo wildly, and the speed was so fast that it even left a trail of afterimages. 0. At this moment, the ground around was fighting. Countless spider web-like cracks spread around the ground attacked by the tentacles. Ulquiorra, Neutra and the other 2 were seriously injured, but they still gritted their teeth and thought about going to support Shiyelaporo. After all, in this situation, every bit of strength is useful. But 8 tails Gyuki has 8 tentacles, and the attack speed is too fast. In just a few seconds, it hit hundreds of times. When the tentacles stopped, Shiyelaporo was almost smashed to pieces. The breath of life is getting weaker and weaker. And there is no chance of resurrection. This guy. Neutra looked at 8 tails Gyuki, his eyes filled with despair. How can it be so much stronger than the previous one? He could barely deal with the previous 7 tails. But the 8 tails in front of him is much stronger than 7 tails. Ulquiorra remained silent, and the green thunder spear appeared in his hand again. Seeing Shiyelaporo's death, Hiei in the 8 tails posture turned his head, stared at the 2 with violent eyes, and suddenly opened his mouth. The violent spiritual power gathered and compressed crazily, forming a giant black sphere. The moment they saw this black sphere, Ulquiorra and Neutra's faces changed drastically at the same time. They had seen 7 tails Chome use the tailed beast cannon before, which was extremely terrifying, almost making the surrounding ground 3 meters high. Unexpectedly, the second Arankar Manos Grande could also use this move. With a roar, the tailed beast cannon compressed to ultimate was fired like a missile, exploding in front of the 2 people. Boom! A huge mushroom cloud rose from the ground. The ruins of the Kyōnoya Palace were no longer ruins after this explosion, but directly turned into an empty wasteland. The 4-beast gate barrier in the distance was shattered into cracks in the shock wave. Chapter 115. Bankai, Baishiafa, Figures in the Snow. Chapter 115 Bankai Baishiafa, Figure in the Ice and Snow. Easy's. What a monster. Neutra crashed into the ground in the distance, his body was charred and covered with wounds, and 3 of his 6 arms were blown off. He struggled several times before barely standing up, looking at the figure of 8 tails Gyuki with despair on his face. The Vastad level Manos Grande in his body is much stronger than ours. How is it possible? I am the 5th Espada. Ulquiorra's situation is not bad, after all, his strength is stronger than Neutra. But half of his arm was also blown to pieces. No, I can't delay Master Aizen's return. Neutra gritted his teeth, no longer had any illusions, turned around and fled far away. Ulquiorra's eyes moved, but did not stop Neutra's actions. He also felt that it was difficult to delay time. In the 8 tails Gyuki state, Niah looked towards the direction where Neutra was running away. He roared and quickly chased after him. Quote. Kurosaki, Sanshisen, Ichigo, Byakuya Kuchiki, Ishida Ryu and others changed their expressions. Don't bring that guy here. They knew that Niah had not attacked them before, but now it was not necessarily the case. Because it seemed that he had lost all his sanity. Sure enough, Niah, who was fighting against 8 tails at the critical moment, had violent eyes and could not distinguish between enemies and friends at all, and launched attacks at the same time. The tailed beast cannon, which was larger than the body, condensed again. Seeing this scene, Neutra couldn't help laughing. If he had known earlier that Niah would lose all his sanity when he entered the complete tailed beast state, he would have led Niah here long ago. Ulquiorra's eyes lit up. The devilish wings spread out, like a black meteor, and quickly led Niah to this side. The dark-tailed beast cannons came with a bang. Kurosaki Ichigo, Byakuya Kuchiki, Zaraki Kenpachi, Sato Yasutora, Unohana Retsu, Nel, Tier Harabel. There was no time to hesitate, and they quickly retreated. Boom. The second-tailed beast cannon exploded again. The ravaged ground of the Kyōya Palace could no longer withstand such a high-intensity attack. Air. The numbing sound of shattering continued. A series of bottomless, spider web-like giant cracks spread across the entire Kyōya Palace. When the cracks spread to an ultimate, the land of the Kyōya Palace collapsed with a bang. Ah! A panicked scream sounded. The people above fell straight down along the collapsed soil, and finally fell into the Dark Minister with a bang. Kurosaki Ichigo rubbed his butt, stood up, and looked around. He immediately gasped and said in a lost voice, "Wait, isn't this the forest we passed by when we came here?" Tear Haribel's beautiful eyes flashed with shock, and he murmured to himself, it penetrated the entire Hueco Mundo and fell from the sky above the Palace of Night into the Manos Grande forest. It's too exaggerated. The other people also had an inexplicable shock. It seems that the newly appeared Arrancar Manos Grande in Kia's body has a particularly strong destructive power. As everyone was shocked, Ulquiorra's mind moved, and in an instant, hundreds of Jillians poured out of the Manos Grande forest. This is an ability that both Ijukas and Vastad-level Manos Grandes have. It can forcibly dominate the irrational Manos Grandes of the lower level. In just a few seconds, the black, hideous Jillians, comparable to high-rise buildings, surrounded Eight Tails Gyuki's body. At the same time, Sero was used, and various colors of light flashed. Eight Tails Gyuki's huge body was covered in dust. Huh, have you trapped him? Noitra breathed a sigh of relief and fled the scene without saying a word. He didn't want to continue to fight this monster to death. However, he just ran 2 steps and saw a stream of black sweat covering the sky and the sun gushing out from the center of countless Jillian. The black octopus ink was like a river, and Kia's figures condensed one after another from it. 10 million angry slaves. Kie, in the eight-tails state, roared instinctively. Hundreds of ink clones quickly approached Jillians, and as long as they were touched, they would be dyed black. The Jillians who were dyed black all stood still and could not move. Damn it, don't get close to me. Noitra looked at the oncoming ink clones furiously, and kept waving the 8-shaped sickle. But the number of ink clones was too many, and he was seriously injured before. Gradually, he could not resist the attack of the ink clones. When one of the ink clones touched him with his right hand, his body and clothes were quickly dyed black by the ink. Damn it, I am the 5th Espada, Noitra Gilga. Noitra roared unwillingly, but before he finished speaking, his body was dyed black by sweat. After dealing with the surrounding Manos Grande, Eight Tails Gyuki looked around and finally fixed his eyes on Kurosaki Ichigo and others. Roar. $G. $G. Inside the 4 beasts gate barrier. The pure white soul-slaying sword and the trident collided continuously. Aronilo held Shiba Kaien's face, his expression became extremely ferocious, pushing the trident, and roared crazily. Rukia, you damn woman, you are so cruel, I will kill you, I will definitely kill you. He felt that Noitra's Reiatsu had completely disappeared. That is to say, in such a short time, the human named Niah killed 3 Espada Manos Grande. Noitra Gilga, Zael Aporo Grants, Zamari Ruro. Each one is stronger than him. This frightened him to the limit, and he was almost crazy. He became more and more brutal, and he was completely aiming for the purpose of killing. Rukia Kuchiki could only hold on. He kept slashing the pure white soul-slaying sword, using the cold air to form ice to counter the opponent's attack. In the consciousness space, unlike the high-rise buildings in Kurosaki Ichigo's consciousness space, Rukia Kuchiki's consciousness space is a land of ice and snow. And on this piece of ice and snow, there is a woman in a kimono. She has ice blue eyes, long lavender hair, a blue star-shaped hairpin, and a light yellow-green belt around her waist. She has a big lavender bow tied behind her back. She is like the incarnation of the goddess of ice, but her expression is gentle and humble. It is the embodiment of Rukia Kuchiki's soul-slaying sword. Soda no Shirayuki. After a conversation, Soda no Shirayuki, who looked like an ice goddess, stroked Rukia Kuchiki's cheek with her right hand and whispered. Rukia, my master, please listen to my real name. My real name is. Rukia Kuchiki's eyes gradually lit up. After hearing the real name of the soul-slaying sword, she clearly felt that there was a strong ice and snow power in her body. Soda no Shirayuki, who looked like an ice goddess, laughed and gently pushed Rukia Kuchiki's back. Then, take me to revenge. After saying this, Soda no Shirayuki's face suddenly turned cold, clenched her fists, and a blizzard rose above the calm ice and snow. The environment seemed to confirm Soda no Shirayuki's anger at this time. She said coldly, we must teach that hateful woman a lesson, and we will never let her go. Rukia Kuchiki was sweating all over. Feeling Soda no Shirayuki was willing to tell her his real name. To a large extent, it was to teach Unohana Retsu a lesson. After a trance, Rukia Kuchiki subconsciously swung a knife and blocked Aronio's trident steadily. What? Aronio's face changed. Rukia, how did you suddenly become more powerful? Don't call me in such an intimate way. Rukia Kuchiki came back to her senses, looked at Aronio with cold eyes, and gritted her teeth. Manos Grande who insulted Captain Kaien, I will make you shatter in the ice and snow. Without waiting for Aronio to speak again, Rukia Kuchiki took a deep breath, held Soda no Shirayuki in his hand, and read out its real name. Bankai. Baixia Penalty. Chapter 116. The Cold Air That Freezes Everything, Sui-Feng's Hard Fight. Chapter 116. The Cold Air That Freezes Everything, Sui-Feng's Hard Fight. White. Pure white color. White airflow condensed from the cold air. When Rukia Kuchiki spoke, Reiatsu turned into pure white cold air, spreading out, and gradually turned into pure white inside the barrier. The ground under his feet condensed into ice at a speed visible to the naked eye. The biting cold air surrounded Rukia Kuchiki. Aronilo had already swung the trident and stabbed with a strong stream of water. But at the moment when the cold air spread, the incoming water froze inch by inch, forming an ice sculpture at a speed visible to the naked eye. What? Aronilo's pupils dilated, and he felt fear even in a frenzy. This time the fear was not because of Niah, but because of Rukia Kuchiki. The opponent was behind Bankai and actually surpassed him. He retreated without hesitation with the trident in his hand. He didn't stop until he retreated 7 or 8 meters. He noticed something and looked at the end of the trident. His face suddenly changed. How is it possible? Shiba Kyan is the vice captain of the 13th division. After I become his appearance, I can not only use his soul-slaying sword, but also have a stronger Reiatsu than him. How could his soul-slaying sword be frozen? The water that was originally wrapped around the end of the trident turned into ice lumps at some point. 03 If he hadn't left quickly, the entire trident might have been frozen by the spread of ice. At the same time, the cold air that enveloped Rukia Kuchiki dissipated, revealing a completely different figure. No longer dressed in the original death suit. Instead, he changed like Kurosaki Ichigo Bankai. The lilac-like ice hair, with a crystal-clear ice flower pinned to the end of the hair, the eyes turned lilac, indifferent and parting. The originally extremely long black eyelashes turned lilac, covered with a faint frost. She was wearing a light purple, opaque dress that seemed to be condensed from ice, with a few spots of light, and a few light purple ribbons flying behind her. The originally pure white Soda no Shirayuki was now condensed from ice, and the light purple was shrouded in frost, filled with unimaginable low temperatures. From a distance, she seemed to be a snow goddess from the ice and snow, with an indifferent temperament, as if she had the calmness of not being startled by the sky falling. Really Bankai. Rukia, you, with your talent, how could you master Bankai so quickly? Aronil looked at Rukia Kuchiki unwillingly. He had all the memories of Shiba Kyan. In his opinion, although Rukia Kuchiki's talent was good, it was absolutely impossible for her to master Bankai so quickly. Bankai. Rukia Kuchiki slowly raised the ice and snow blade. Thinking of the past. It was because Niah often brought her to Hueco Mundo to hone her skills before, and Reiatsu was getting stronger through repeated training. With the skills taught by Unohana Retsu, he was able to obtain the true name of the soul-slaying sword so quickly. However, Rukia Kuchiki was not going to tell the Manos Grande in front of her all this. She looked at Aronil with indifference. Manos Grande of the 9th Espada, stop talking with this face, let Captain Kyan rest. As she said this, Rukia Kuchiki swung the ice and snow knife in her hand and slashed downwards. The biting cold formed a chill that spread over. Wherever the chill was covered, it all turned into pure white ice. Damn stinky woman, I admit that I died in the hands of that monster, but how could I die in your hands? Aronil roared with a ferocious face. He activated the power that had devoured 30,000 Manos Grandes and stabbed the trident in his hand fiercely. The water flow and the chill collided with a bang. The water was frozen, but it did not hurt Aronio's body. He was relieved and sneered. What? You said it was Bankai. I was really shocked. I didn't expect that it was just this ability. As soon as he finished speaking, his lower body turned into an ugly octopus, and he waved his tentacles violently, hitting Rukia Kuchiki with violent force. The power of 30,000 Manos Grande made this attack extremely violent. It even made a sound of breaking through the air. In response, Rukia Kuchiki's expression remained indifferent. He held the handle of Bankai Baishiafa with both hands and said calmly, "Idiot. This is the real Bankai." The next second, pure white Reiatsu surged and gathered in the sky, and a large disc-shaped white light appeared. What is that? Aronilo looked up in confusion. Just as he looked up, a beam of light burst out from the ground, piercing the sky. At the same time, a bright wave of light appeared on the ground, surging and dancing like a giant wave. A strong chill permeated from the light wave. Before Aronilo could come to his senses, his body was already filled with icy cold air, and it was frozen into ice inch by inch. In just a blink of an eye, he was frozen into an ice sculpture by the cold air. The ugly octopus with purple lower body even maintained the attack posture of waving its tentacles, about to attack Rukia Kuchiki. Aronilo's face was still looking at the sky, and there was still a puzzled expression. But it had been frozen into a lifelike ice sculpture. Rukia Kuchiki withdrew the soul-slaying sword with an indifferent expression, and said lightly, "Captain Kyan, your relatives are all well, please rest in peace." The moment the blade was retracted, the 9th Espada Aronilor, who was frozen into an ice sculpture, had a pure white ice body that shattered like the sky. Countless ice cubes fell with a crackling sound. Aronilor remained frozen until his death. Looking at the ice all over the ground, Rukia Kuchiki seemed to have thought of something and said lightly, "I forgot that Niah seemed to need these Manos Grande corpses, but it doesn't matter. This guy's corpse is not qualified to become Niah's Pain 6 paths." As she said that, Rukia Kuchiki turned around and left the barrier in the posture of an ice goddess. It seems that because of Bankai, her thinking now tends to be more ice-based, indifferent and ruthless, like the high and mighty ice goddess. Present world, above Karakura Town. Hey Hey, what? Female Shinigami, is this all you have? Wearing a saber-toothed tiger skull mask, a black braid, golden eyes, and a martial arts uniform, Arrancar Manos Grande. He kept waving the soul-slaying sword in his hand, laughing, mocking Sui-Feng's weakness. After swinging the sword many times, he waved his right hand, and a purple-red light burst out. Sero. Sui-Feng's face was slightly solemn, and he quickly stretched his arm forward and shouted. Hado 33 Red Fire Cannon. At 2H at carat at plus. The fireball formed in his palm suddenly collided with the purple-red Sero. But it only lasted for 2 or 3 seconds, and the purple-red Sero swallowed the fireball of the red fire cannon and hit Sui-Feng's shoulder. The slender figure flew backwards and hit an unmanned building in the distance. Boom. The wall of the building was hit with cracks. Damn it, he's just a subordinate officer, how can he be so strong? Sui-Feng ignored the pain in his shoulder, his eyes were cold, and he flew back into the sky. He looked down again, and saw his deputy captain Omeda being chased and beaten by another burly subordinate officer Arrancar. He looked extremely embarrassed, running and crawling, and shouting for help. Sui-Feng's face darkened, and he gritted his teeth and said, Omeda, if you can't kill that guy, you'll be ready to die when you go back. Hey, Omeda almost cried. Captain Sui-Feng, spare me, this guy is really 810 strong. The Arrancar Manos Grande named Geo Weiger, after seeing this scene, sneered contemptuously with his soul-slaying sword. Female Shinigami, do you think you still have a chance to go back? We are subordinates of His Majesty the Great Emperor Baragan Lusenbairn. Although we are only subordinates, our strength is not weaker than those Espada. It's just because we are loyal to the Great Emperor that we are too lazy to fight for the name of Espada. Hey, Sui-Feng sneered, interrupted Geo Weiger's words, and swung the soul-slaying sword in his hand like a queen bee sting, and said disdainfully. What great emperor? Now Hueco isn't Aizen Sōsuke the only emperor of Mundo. Even his position was taken away by a Shinigami, but he still claims to be the emperor and thinks he is the emperor of Hueco Mundo. It's ridiculous, like a clown. Quote. After hearing Sui-Feng's words, veins gradually appeared on Baragan's forehead, who was sitting firmly on the bone throne in the sky. He clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes showed a piercing murderous intent. Quote. Quote. As the emperor of Hueco Mundo, he was taken away by Aizen Sōsuke, a Shinigami. This was the most humiliating thing for him. Now, he is not only not the king of Hueco Mundo, but not even the first Espada. Sui-Feng's ridicule was like a sharp blade piercing his heart, making him want to kill this woman himself. Sensing Baragan's anger, Geo Weiger's forehead was covered with cold sweat. He looked at Sui-Feng furiously, and dared not be careless anymore. He shouted. Woman, you can only talk big now. I will kill you who dares to disrespect the emperor. Quote. As he spoke, he clenched the soul-slaying sword, a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes, and he roared loudly. Bite it to pieces. Tiger Fang's Swift Wind. Chapter 117. The Hard Fight in Karakura Town, Many Returned Blades Arrancar. Chapter 117. Karakura Town's Hard Battle, Numerous Returning Blades Arrancar. This guy's Reiatsu is very strong. Looking at Geo Weiger, whose body was growing bigger and bigger with red Reiatsu bursting out from his body. Sui-Feng's expression became solemn. For the first time, she felt that the other party was not lying. With this level of Reiatsu, Geo Weiger could indeed compete for the title of Espada. Because this level of Reiatsu was not weaker than Sajin Kashiwamura after Bankai, that is, weaker than Grimmjow. In fact, Sui-Feng's feeling was not wrong. Before Aizen Sōsuke occupied Hueco Mundo, Hueco Palace had no concept of Espada. As the emperor, Baragan Lusenbairn had extremely rough management methods, and all Arrancar Manos Grande could only submit to him. It was because Aizen Sōsuke defeated Baragan that the Espada system was implemented. As the former emperor, Baragan naturally had many loyal subordinates, and the 5 subordinates were no weaker than the Espada who ranked lower. Even though Baragan was defeated by Aizen Sōsuke, they were still loyal to the former emperor. In Sui-Feng's eyes, Geo Weiger, who was originally handsome. His appearance became more and more hideous. His body expanded to 5 or 6 meters, as if he had turned into a dark-skinned giant ape, but his wrists had tiger hair. The palm disappeared, replaced by 2 tiger fangs, which looked extremely sharp. I hate this form. Geo Weiger looked at his body, waved the 2 fangs in his hand, and said with disgust, because every time I transform into this form, it takes 2 months to recover. At this point, Geo Weiger looked at Sui-Feng with cold eyes and said, Woman, be prepared. As a punishment for letting me use this form, I will tear your flesh apart bit by bit. Sui-Feng wore the soul-slaying sword Suzumaki on her hand, which was like the queen's bee sting. She sneered. It's big, but what's the use? As she spoke, she glanced at the black lines on Geo Weiger's burly body, which were her own bee pattern. As long as her Suzumaki hits the same position twice, the opponent will definitely die. Its name is 2 hits to kill. Geo Weiger didn't know this. He stepped on the ground and appeared in front of Sui-Feng in an instant, stabbing down with a tiger's fang-like sword. $71. Sui-Feng's pupils dilated, and he had no time to dodge, so he could only hold Sui-Feng across his chest. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. A tiger fang-like blade was blocked. But Quifeng was a very small soul-slaying sword, not even as big as a palm, and could not block the second tiger fang-like blade at all. The sound of flesh piercing rang out. Sui-Feng's face turned pale, and he looked at his shoulder in pain. There was a second tiger fang-like blade piercing there. Ha 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 ha. Geo Weiger laughed loudly, and directly picked Sui-Feng up and flew away, looking at her proudly, and said proudly. Woman, don't waste time, use your Bankai, although even if you Bankai, you will only die. Quote. Sui-Feng retreated quickly, his face pale, but he still looked at Belarusenbang with cold eyes. Her Bankai was used to deal with that guy. ... Crunch, Leopard King. Grimjow roared wildly, and a strong blue Reiatsu burst out of his body. In an instant, Grimjow's soul-slaying sword disappeared, and his body turned into a white leopard in the blue Reiatsu, with eye shadow extending to the temples. The ears turned into leopard ears, the hair turned into long hair hanging down to the waist, and the mask moved to the forehead. The whole body is equipped with white tight armor, and a segmented tail with black ends grows from the back, and the ends of the limbs turn black. It's like a bloodthirsty cheetah about to pounce on the hunt. Entering this form, Grimjow's speed increased several times, flashing in the sky, and only the blue afterimage left by it can be seen. It really turned into a leopard, but this speed. Hitsugaya Toshiro felt the situation was difficult, and subconsciously tightened his soul-slaying sword. Suddenly, a blue figure flashed and appeared behind Hitsugaya Toshiro. Grimjow pointed his right hand at his back. A cruel and fanatical smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Claw of the Panther King. In an instant, dozens of meters of blue light marks formed on Grimjow's 10 fingers, as if the claws of a blue leopard were extended countless times. With a swish sound, Hitsugaya Dongshuo also widened his eyes. There was a heart-wrenching pain in his back. Matsumoto Rangaku's face changed and he looked at the captain with 4 blood marks on his back in shock. Not good, Captain Hitsugaya. She gritted her teeth, pointed her soul-slaying sword at Grimjow, and shouted. Mutter, cat. The silver blade dissipated with the wind and turned into extremely fine yellow sand. But before the yellow sand touched Grimjow, one of the 3 female Manos Grandes in the distance said coldly. How dare you be distracted while fighting us? As she said that, she waved her soul-slaying sword and shouted. Bite her apart, General Golden Lion. After the Reiatsu of the returned blade dissipated, her figure was revealed, and she was in the posture of a Roman Valkyrie. She had brown skin, a plump figure, 6 abdominal muscles, a hollow located above the abdominal muscles, and a black iron-heavy sword in her hand. With one step, she slashed directly at Matsumoto Rangaku. Matsumoto Rangaku looked ugly and had to use Hineka to resist the attack of the female Manos Grande first, while shouting. Wait, you are Tia's subordinates, we are not enemies, maybe you don't know, Tia and Niah have a good relationship now. After the previous battle, she already knew the identities of these 3 female Shinigami. They are all subordinates of Tier Harabel, named Apache, Francesca M.I. Roz, and Sun Sun. In order to gain the trust of the other party, she didn't even dare to say that Tia is now Naniah's maid. Even so, after hearing what Matsumoto Rangaku said, was still furious, waving the black iron-heavy sword, gritting his teeth and said, don't call so intimately, how can Harabel have a good relationship with humans, you must be lying to me. Quote. The relationship was really bad at the beginning. The woman wanted to kill Naniah, but she was beaten so badly. Matsumoto Rangaku complained in his heart. He heard Katetsu Aizen say that. Every time Tier Harabel made trouble, Naniah would hit her butt with a round fan until it's swollen. After a long time, Tier Harabel seemed to have given up resistance. She became Naniah's maid obediently. Seeing that talking was useless, Matsumoto Rangaku also gave up talking and said with a dark face, you female gorilla, be prepared. What did you say? Roz looked at Matsumoto Rangaku furiously. Behind her, Arankar, a woman named Apache, covered her mouth inappropriately and snickered secretly. Roz, she said you were a female gorilla, this is really good. Don't be too proud, I'll kill you, Apache. Ross looked at Apache with a dark face. Although they have been together since the Killian period, they always quarrel from time to time due to personality issues. Both of you, be quiet. The last female Arankar, wearing white clothes and covering her face with her sleeves, looked at Matsumoto Rangaku and whispered, hurry up and catch this woman. I heard that she is a vice captain. Just use her to exchange for Harabel-sama. While they were talking, Li Zhao, Hitsugaya Toshiro in the distance, holding the handle of Hirenmaru with both hands, said in a deep voice, Bankai. Daiguren Hirenmaru. The biting coldness broke out, and 3 big red lotuses and an ice dragon condensed behind Hitsugaya Toshiro. A wave of the blade was an iceberg. But after a few consecutive cuts, Hitsugaya Toshiro's face became more and more ugly. After returning to the blade, Grimjow seemed to have increased his speed dozens of times on the basis of the cheetah, and it was difficult for the spirit vein to capture its figure. Human Kie, why haven't you come back from Hueco Mundo yet? Hitsugaya Toshiro couldn't help but mutter to himself. At this moment, he inexplicably thought of Kie. If Kie was here now, the battle would definitely not be so difficult. Thinking of this, Hitsugaya Toshiro swung his sword again and shouted. 1,000-year ice prison. Many ice pillars that reached the sky appeared out of thin air, almost chasing Grimmjow and freezing him. But they were all dodged by the latter at an extremely fast speed. Seizing a gap, Grimmjow stretched out his right hand with the claws of the Leopard King and shouted. Flash of King Void. Chapter 118. Black Rope Heavenly Punishment King vs. Angry Beast, a Giant Battle. Chapter 118 Black Rope Heavenly Punishment Ming Wong vs. Wrathful Beast, a giant-like battle. Her. The harsh sound of a mirror breaking rang out. What? The Shinigami fighting over Karakura Town all changed their expressions and looked at the giant pillar in the southwest direction in disbelief. That pillar was the core of the barrier, and there were 4 of them, distributed in the 4 corners of Karakura Town. It was because of the existence of these 4 pillars that the original Karakura Town was hidden, so that humans would not be affected by the aftermath of the battle. But now, the barrier rooted in it was broken. That is the direction guarded by Akaku. Ayasagawa Yumashika's pupils dilated, and she rushed over to support without hesitation. Wait. Hisagi Shuhei quickly stopped him and said in a deep voice. Calm down, what's the point of you going over now that Kakuzu has been defeated? Stop talking nonsense, get out of my way. Ayasagawa Yumashika's eyes were filled with anger, and he put his hand on the hilt of the Soul Zon sword and said in a deep voice. If you insist on stopping me, I will go over even if I have to use force. While Ayasagawa Yumashika was speaking, Kira Izuru in the distance extended his index finger to him and shot a drop of green liquid. The liquid touched Ayasagawa Yumashika's cheek, and the latter fell into a coma immediately. Kira, you. Hisagi Shuhei quickly looked at Kira Izuru. Don't worry, it's a little bit, it's better to let him calm down now. Kira Izuru shook the bottle in his hand, indicating that there was no danger. Suddenly, the 2 people's faces changed. They turned their heads at the same time to look at the place where the barrier was broken. I saw that the place where the barrier was broken was flashing with light green light, and the hidden Karakura Town gradually returned to its original place. Even passers-by walking on the street could be seen. 173. The 2 of them looked extremely ugly. You know, one of Aizen Sōsuke's goals is to collect the souls of 100,000 humans. You are not willing to use the hidden ability until the end. The place where the barrier was broken. One of the 5 subordinate officers of Baragan, Shinonbo, looked at Madarame Makaku who fell to the ground and slowly retracted his huge fist. His pale white mask was located on his lower jaw, with 2 rounded corners on the left and right. He was huge and wore huge white clothes all over his body. Just when he was fighting, he clearly felt the suppressed power in Madarame Makaku's body. Unfortunately, until the end, Madarame Makaku did not use that power. Hearing this, Madarame Makaku gritted his teeth, forced himself to stand up, raised the broken Hozukimaru, and said with a smile of dissatisfaction. Manos Grande, do you think you can defeat me like this? He roared, holding Hozukimaru in his hand and rushed forward again. But unfortunately, the gap between the 2 was too big. Even though Madarame Makaku exerted his full strength, he was still defeated by Shinonbo and stepped on him. The latter said lightly. Since you are still alive, show your hidden strength. Show it, tell me quickly, say you know it, otherwise you will die. Madarame Makaku screamed when he was stepped on, but still gritted his teeth and said. Don't joke, what hidden strength, how can there be such a thing? Really? Shinonbo was too lazy to talk nonsense, raised his foot and stepped down heavily. At the critical moment, boom, Shinonbo's figure was chopped off by a knife. Kashiwamura Sajin, who was regarded as a unit of measurement by Niah, appeared and stood in front of Madarame Makaku, waving the soul-slaying sword and said in a deep voice. Leave this to me, leave quickly. Captain Kashiwamura. Madarame Makaku's eyes were happy at first, and then he gritted his teeth and said, No, I want to kill this guy myself. Stop talking nonsense, you will really die if you continue to fight. The vice captain of the 7th Division, Shuba Tetsuziman, said in a deep voice. Don't delay my captain's work, leave with me quickly. While several people were talking, Shinonbo had slowly stood up, tilted his head, and looked at Kashiwamura Sajin with interest. Captain Shinigami, you are quite powerful. Kashiwamura Sajin said in a deep voice. I am the vice captain of the 7th Division, Manos Grande, be prepared. Ha 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 ha. Shinonbo laughed and took out the soul-slaying sword, which was as good as a toothpick to him, from his sleeve. Shinigami, stop bragging, I'll show you what real power is. As he said this, he drew out his soul-slaying sword. Breathe, giant wrist whale. When he returned to the sword, his head first became bigger, then his hands, and the walls of the entire street were crushed by him. Finally, his body seemed to turn into a whale, semi-oval, with the texture of a whale's belly from the lower jaw to the entire upper limbs. Entering this state, Shinonbo did not hesitate to punch down with the 10-corner 10 punches. Boom! This punch blew up the 2 surrounding streets. Seeing this scene, Shoten Tetsuziman's face became more solemn, and he took Madarame Makaku away by force regardless of his resistance. If I take a punch from this monster, I will die. After the two left, Kashiwa Murasajan held the hilt with both hands and said slowly. Bankai. Black rope, a day, heavenly punishment king. The armored black iron god of war appeared again, the same size as the giant whale that Kanongbo turned into, and they were two huge monsters. The two giant figures attracted the attention of all the Shinigami and hollows present. Kashiwa Murasajan swung his sword, and the black iron god of war behind him also swung his sword, with such great power that the clouds in the sky were cut off. Hinongbo did not dodge or evade, but raised his fist and chopped at the blade of the black iron god of war. There was a loud bang. Hinongbo, who had the body of a giant whale, was chopped off again by this sword. A huge wound was left on his arm. How is it possible? Kanongbo looked at Kashiwa Murasajan in disbelief. He originally thought that Shinigami were all weaklings. After all, he had just defeated a man who was suspected of mastering Bankai. Madarame Makaku. I didn't expect that Kashiwa Murasajan would teach him a lesson with one sword. Kashiwa Murasajan slowly raised the blade, and Nanaya's figure flashed in his mind, and he said, being defeated by a human many times, even I have improved. He slashed again with this sword. Just when the blade was about to touch Shinonbo. Dia. The blade was firmly grasped by a big hand. He ran was Arankar Manos Grande, who did not come to the battlefield of Karakura Town in the original book. Yami Yargo. He was seen boiling with red Reiatsu, holding the blade of the black rope heavenly punishment king with one hand, ignoring the blood on his hand, and laughed. Interesting, interesting, I like to fight with this kind of big guy the most, don't pay attention to that waste, come and fight with me. Kashiwa Murasajan's face changed, and he looked at Yami's palm solemnly. Holding the old man's blade with one hand. Yami laughed loudly, his body Reiatsu was getting stronger and bigger, and he laughed violently. Shinigami, Master Aizen said this battle is important, so, although I am reluctant, I have to end the battle as soon as possible. Quote. As his body grew larger, his lower body gradually grew several sturdy legs, and a tail stretched out from his back. Looking closely, he actually had 12 legs. The Espada symbol on his chest changed from 10 to 0. Seeing the change in the symbol, Kashiwa Murasajan finally couldn't keep calm anymore, his pupils dilated to the limit, and he muttered to himself. Espada, are you the strongest Manos Grande? Yes. Yami laughed and said, this is my return blade, listen carefully. Get furious, angry beast. The moment the voice fell, his 12 legs stepped forward at the same time, came to the front of the black rope heavenly punishment Mingwang, and hit him. There was a loud bang. The black rope heavenly punishment Mingwang, who had just knocked Kinenbo away, was knocked away by Yami in the same posture. Kashiwa Murasajan looked solemn, waving the giant sword in his hand, controlling the black rope heavenly punishment king, and started a fierce fight with him. Because both of them were extremely huge, the destructive power of the battle was terrifying. Dozens of streets around were destroyed. Hundreds of high-rise buildings were smashed by the two men. All the Shinigami and hollows present looked extremely solemn. After all, this was the most tragic battle between the Shinigami captain and Espada Arankar. After a hard fight, both of them were covered with wounds. But the more wounds on their bodies, the angrier Yami became, and the more angry he became, the faster his Reiatsu would increase. Finally, after reaching a certain limit, Yami roared to the sky, and the shape of his body changed again. Two white bone spikes protruded from the back of his head, and a black protrusion appeared on the tail behind him, which was similar to an ancient dinosaur. As Yami punched again, Kashiwa Murasajan's black rope heavenly punishment king collapsed. Suddenly, all the Shinigami's hearts sank. Chapter 119. Praying for the arrival of 7 Knights, Nine Tails Posture. Chapter 119 Praying for the arrival of Niah, Nine Tails Posture. Captain Kashiwamura was defeated. Vice Captain of the 7th Division, Shooting Field Tetsuziman looked at the fallen figure in the distance, and his voice became unusually dry. Not only because Kashiwamura Sajan was his captain, but also because this was the first top powerhouse to fall in the war between Shinigami and Manos Grande. This means that the Shinigami side has fallen into a disadvantage. Ah, Captain Aizen, it looks like our situation is very good. Surrounded by flames, Ichimaru Jin said with a smile while looking at Aizen Sōsuke. Hearing this, Aizen Sōsuke did not have any happy expression, glanced at the sky around him, and said lightly. There is nothing to be happy about. Hueco Mundo seems to have a big problem. Espada, 4 of them were killed by him, that human, it's really interesting. Although he left Hueco Mundo, he still had a way to obtain information about Hueco Mundo. According to the information he got, it seems that except for Ulquiorra, all other Espadas were killed. Moreover, they were all killed by a runaway human. What? Ichimaru Jin was shocked, and the figure of Niah flashed in his mind. He didn't expect that he had grown to this point. I wonder if he can defeat Aizen Sōsuke. This thought flashed in Ichimaru Jin's mind, but he quickly put it behind him. No one knows Aizen Sōsuke better than him. In his opinion, Aizen Sōsuke, who has merged with Hōgyoku, still looks like a Shinigami, but his inner self has long transcended Shinigami. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is a creature close to God. Only my Shinso can do it. Ichimaru Jin still has a smiling expression, but his hand can't help but put it on the handle. After 2 seconds of silence, Aizen Sōsuke looked at Osu who was present and said lightly, "It seems that we can't let these guys die. Get ready to fight." Originally, in his eyes, these Arrancar Manos Grande were all consumables, and it didn't matter even if they died. But after learning about Hueco Mundo, he felt for the first time that these Manos Grande were still useful. At least they could be used as cannon fodder. Ichimaru Jin, who had just calmed down, couldn't hold it anymore. His pupils dilated, and the shock was even stronger than the last time. That human boy, has it put pressure on Aizen Sōsuke? The fierce battle continued. But a shadow was cast in the hearts of all Shinigami. And with Apache, Rhodes, and Sun, the 3-tier Haribel's subordinate officer used a certain ability of fusion. The shadow in his heart became heavier and heavier. The 3 women grabbed their right arms at the same time, and with a sudden force, they pulled their arms off and said, "Mixed Beast God." The arms of the 3 people merged together, bursting with a dazzling red light. When the red light disappeared, a humanoid monster with deer horns and deer feet, long black curly hair, and 100 balls as a tail appeared in the sky. This monster released Reiatsu that surpassed the 3 people. Even, it surpassed Tier Haribel and all the Arrancar Manos Grande present. Seeing this monster, Ichimaru Jin barely calmed down. It was because the 3 women were able to create this monster that Aizen Sōsuke brought them to Karakura Town when Tier Haribel was captured. This monster may be stronger than Tier Haribel. Ichimaru Jin thought silently. And Ichimaru as Jin expected, when this monster called Hun Jushen started to fight, all Shinigami seemed quite powerless. Either they were blown to the ground, or they were squeezed and fainted. In just a few minutes, Shiba Tetsuziman, Hisagi Shuhei, Kira Izuru, Ayasagawa Yumashika, Omaeda. All the vice captains were seriously injured. Only the captains of each division were still fighting hard with the enemy. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage, old man Yamamoto could not sit still and slowly drew out his soul-slaying sword. But at this moment, Aizen Sōsuke's voice sounded inappropriately, but not in the flames, but in the Shinigami crowd. It was Hinamori Momo, who said calmly, "Captain, are you sure that you swung your sword to cut down the beast god?" Hearing this, the faces of the Shinigami present changed drastically. It was unexpected that Aizen Sōsuke was not trapped in the flames, but disguised as Hinamori Momo. Old man Yamamoto narrowed his eyes slightly, but gave up the idea of attacking. He really couldn't see through Kyōka Suigetsu now. And without the help of old man Yamamoto, the situation on the Shinigami side was immediately precarious. Not only did the beast god choose to attack, the fire-extinguishing prince who was playing in the mud in the distance also chose to attack. The strength of both was extremely terrifying. If you have to say, the former should have reached between the second and third Espada. The strength of the latter was even more amazing, almost between the first and second Espada. Just a roar from the fire-extinguishing prince caused Hitsugaya Toshiro, who was using the Ice Sky 100 Flowers burial, to be thrown into a bitter battle and seriously injured. The snowflakes in the sky were even scattered because of this. This guy, Hitsugaya Toshiro, had blood oozing from the corner of his mouth, holding the soul-slaying sword in his hand, looking at the figure in the distance in disbelief. The figure had slightly curly golden hair, purple eyes, several Madara on his face, and a hollow hole in the middle of his body. The hollow mask was in the shape of a crown, and he wore loose clothes that exposed the hollow hole. Zanpakuto was standing with his back to Arrancar behind him. His expression was a little stupid, and he looked silly, but he never thought that his strength was so amazing that he almost instantly injured himself. 0. Asking for flowers. Looking at the Chaos Beast God again, I saw that the huge figure was launching a fierce attack on Jashiro Yukitaki. Jashiro Yukitaki, who was already weak, had only fought a few moves with the Beast God, and blood oozed from the corner of his mouth due to weakness. The mood of the Shinigami present was sinking again and again. They would never have thought that the combat power of the Meteorite would be suppressed by Hueco Mundo so much. Seeing that the situation was getting more and more critical, they inexplicably thought of the figure of a human boy. The human boy was so powerful that he could not only see through Aizen Sōsuke's Kyōka Suigetsu, but also fight with the captain's Bankai. If he came, he would definitely be able to reverse the situation that was on the verge of one-sidedness. But that boy was in Hueco Mundo at this time. Beside him, there were a group of powerful strong men, Unohana Retsu, Kurosaki Ichigo, Nailu, Tier Haribel. Slowly, the defeated Shinigami couldn't help but pray, hoping that the boy could quickly bring people back from Hueco Mundo. Open black lens bracket 014501503 Philo 182,481,591. At the same time, in Hueco Mundo, the boy they prayed for wore a nine-tails fox-like white and red mask on his face, which made him look particularly strange. But at this time, he was still affected by the hollow. He pointed his right index finger at Zaraki Kenpachi in the distance and said coldly and ruthlessly, "Hollow dog cannon." A dazzling red light burst out. Zaraki Kenpachi looked fanatical. Not only was he not afraid, but he excitedly rushed up with his sword, laughing and saying, "Chenny, I have long wanted to fight you again. Let's fight." Quote. Boom. Zaraki Kenpachi disappeared in the Manos Grande forest. The dark red shock wave directly shattered the soil above and below, and he returned to the ruins of the Hunya Palace. From beginning to end, he didn't even finish his words. Seeing this scene, cold and arrogant Byakuya Kuchiki also had cold sweat on his forehead, and couldn't help saying, "Why do I feel that this vasto lord in this guy's body is close to the captain?" Kuretsuchi Mayuri looked at Nanaya's figure enthusiastically, couldn't help licking his lips, and said, "Not close, it's completely the level of Reiatsu of the Captain's Shikai, and looks stronger than the Captain's Shikai. And, in this posture, he seems to have retained some rationality. It's incredible, how can such a powerful vasto lord level Manos Grande be imprisoned in the body? I really want to cut this layer of flesh and let me study it." 89. Before Kuretsuchi Mayuri finished speaking, Niah, wearing a fox mask, looked over with cold eyes and said indifferently, "Neri, die." The white and red figure flashed, and Niah's figure instantly appeared in front of Kuretsuchi Mayuri. He slapped him casually. Kuretsuchi Mayuri's body flew backwards, and she and Zaraki Kenpachi lay dead on the ruins of the Kyanyaku Palace. Chapter 120, Shy Ice Beauty, Nine Tails Combat Strength. Chapter 120, Shy Ice Beauty, Nine Tails Combat Strength. Nana, where are you? Outside the barrier of the Four Beasts Gate. In the Bankai posture, Rukia Kuchiki, who can be called an ice beauty, has an ice snow color and an indifferent expression, looking around for Nana's figure. Even though she is affected by Bankai, her personality is a little cold and indifferent. But Rukia Kuchiki still wants to share the joy of obtaining Bankai and killing the enemy with Nana. But what puzzled her was that on the ruins of the Kyūya Palace, the ruins only became a little bigger, but there was no human figure. After searching for a while, Rukia Kuchiki stepped forward, and everything she passed was covered with ice and snow. Walk to the center of the Kyūya Palace ruins. Rukia Kuchiki finally stopped, looked at the figure lying on the ground not far away, and asked indifferently, "Captain Zaraki, what's wrong with you?" The person lying on the ground was Zaraki Kenpachi. He looked seriously injured, but his life was not in danger, and he was bandaged. Kusajishi Yakiru was leaning on him and eating candy. Zaraki Kenpachi's mouth twitched when he heard Rukia Kuchiki's words. What could he say? What should he say? He was fighting with Niah in the hollow, 210, state, and was seriously injured by the opponent's Sero. It's too embarrassing. He hasn't experienced such a miserable defeat. Even if he fought with old man Yamamoto, it would have been at least several days. No, I can't fight this monster anymore. There is no pleasure in fighting. Zaraki Kenpachi thought silently. Then, he explained the whole story to Rukia Kuchiki. Rukia Kuchiki nodded indifferently. At this time, Zaraki Kenpachi noticed the change of Rukia Kuchiki, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he said excitedly. Little girl of the Kuchiki family, you have obtained Bankai. When I can move a little, do you want to fight with me? No. Rukia Kuchiki refused coldly, and then thought of something, keeping the posture of an ice beauty, with a slight smile on her lips. If you must fight me, I will let Niah fight you. Zaraki Kenpachi suddenly felt unusually depressed. He really didn't want to fight with Niah, because he was easily defeated by the other party before he could feel the pleasure of fighting. This is almost exactly the same as fighting with the captain. Kusajishi Yakiru comforted him. Xiaojian, it's okay. If you can't fight Xiaoyi, then go find Xiaohu. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes lit up immediately, and he realized that he had forgotten Kurosaki Ichigo. That guy is an opponent who is on par with him. Every time he can cut himself all over, he can feel the perfect pleasure of fighting. Okay, I'll go find him when I recover a little. Quote. A yellow-haired delinquent boy who was in a coma couldn't help but shudder, even in a coma, with an ominous premonition. Here, down there, Rukia Kuchiki came to the huge sinkhole that penetrated the Manos Grande forest. She took a step forward and her figure fell. In the dark environment. The ice snow beauty looked around with a little surprise. Ichigo, Sato, Ryu, brother. Everyone whose name she called out was seriously injured and fell to the ground, being treated by Inoue or Hime. The first three had fallen into a coma, and only Byakuya Kuchiki was still awake. After all, he was her brother. Even though Rukia Kuchiki was now cold and indifferent, she still asked faintly. Brother, what happened here? Byakuya Kuchiki's reaction was similar to Zaraki's. Kenpachi is the same indifferent. His mouth twitched slightly, then he turned his head silently and said nothing. He was hit too hard just now. He was already banked, but was shocked that the opponent ended the battle with a virtual dog cannon. The time consumed was not even more than 20 seconds. Obviously, in Niah's Eight Tails form, he could still fight with the opponent. Fortunately, Inoue Orihime has a gentle personality. After treating the four people, he put his index finger to his mouth, thought for a while and said softly. Just now, Niah-kun grew 9 beautiful red tails behind his back, and wore a white and red fox mask on his face. Quote. So handsome, it gives me a special weird feeling, my heart is beating now. Don't talk about your heartbeat. Rukia Kuchiki in the ice and snow form, the mood fluctuated for the first time, and couldn't help complaining. It's already a headache to have one Hana Retsu. Another Inoue Orihime, is she still alive? After that, Nanaya-kun took off his white and red mask and seemed to have returned to normal, but a little tired. After that, Captain Hana Retsu said that for safety, she would take Nanaya-kun to the barrier to rest. Not long after the two of them left, Nell said she was a little worried and followed them. Tia was the last to go. After Inoue Orihime finished speaking, he looked at Rukia Kuchiki with some curiosity and asked, Rukia, why did Captain Hana Retsu and the others look so red and nervous before they left? Rukia Kuchiki. After hearing Inoue Orihime's simple question, Rukia Kuchiki could no longer hold her icy attitude. My mentality collapsed. It's not what I thought. Nothing. Someone wants to die. Rukia Kuchiki's face turned black, and she strode forward with the attitude of an ice beauty. Soon, she came to an inverted yellow triangular cube. Since the barrier did not resist, she walked into the barrier easily. When she saw the situation inside, Rukia Kuchiki's eyes suddenly went dark. Looking again, the ice beauty blushed because of this. Gritting her teeth, she said, Hana Retsu, Tir Harabel, Nilil du Odchuvank. Can you explain it to me? She read out the full names of the three people for the first time, and a strong chill spread. The three women shuddered involuntarily. Although they were close together, the three of them didn't wear a single piece of clothing, and they still felt the biting cold. Hana Retsu looked over, gently smoothed her sweaty hair behind her back with her jade hands, and said with a smile, Rukia-chan, you haven't defeated me yet, isn't it normal for me to look for Niah? The ice beauty's chest was bulging with anger, but she couldn't say anything. After all, she did not defeat Hana Retsu. And the latter also taught her the skills and knowledge of Bankai. The most important thing is that when she entered the Four Beasts Gate, she was ready to be beaten by Hana Retsu as preparing to cheat. Nilu, Tia, can you two explain to me? The ice beauty gritted her teeth and turned her head, looking at the two women with unfriendly eyes. One Hana Retsu is fine. How come there are two more now? Nilu blinked, her face slightly red, and whispered, Rukia-chan, I'm curious about the feeling of asterisk, so I came here. As she said, Nilu touched her shoulder, her little face flushed and whispered. It's really comfortable. The ice beauty had an urge to kill. But she knew that Nilu really didn't lie. After all, Nilu's character was originally very simple, and it was really possible that she came in out of curiosity. Tir Harabel coughed and wanted to bury her face in the high collar of her clothes, but found that the clothes had disappeared. The healthy wheat-colored skin inside was revealed. So, she could only turn her head to one side and whispered, Rukia, don't get me wrong, I just want to sneak attack Kie when he is weak. Are all the clothes stolen by sneak attack gone? Rukia Kuchiki couldn't help but grind her silver teeth, intending to freeze all three thieving cats into ice sculptures. That, Rukia. Kie, who was held in the arms of the three women and resting his head on Tir Harabel's thigh, said dryly, I just finished training, and the spiritual power consumption is really a bit large, so. Kie. Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth and looked over, grinding her teeth, and simply pounced on him with her teeth and claws. I will freeze you into an ice sculpture. You super idiot, after training, you must stay away from these bad women. Hiss, it's so cold. Kie took a breath of cold air, and felt that there was a jade body made of ice in his arms. Hana Retsu saw this and pulled Rukia Kuchiki over with a smile. Rukia-chan, is it time to end the Bankai form? Rukia Kuchiki was stunned for a moment. Then she realized that the spiritual power in her body was too much and it was no longer enough to support the Bankai form. The ice gradually faded, revealing her original appearance. Rukia Kuchiki felt the weakness deep in her bones and didn't even want to move a finger. Let me rest for a while. Rukia Kuchiki waved her hand. She wanted to rest before attacking these three thieves. Seeing this, Hana Retsu's mouth curled up slightly, and she gently hugged Rukia Kuchiki with her arms, slowly stretched out her arms, and said with a smile. Rukia-chan, you made it so cold here, it's not what a good child does. Next, it's time for punishment. Rukia Kuchiki was stunned for 2 seconds, then her face turned red like a big apple, and she struggled hard. Captain Hana Retsu, you are the captain, you can't do this. Nell, Tia, what are you two going to do? Put me down. Chapter 121. Training completed, Reiatsu crushed the sky. Chapter 121 Training is complete, Reiatsu crushes the sky. Og. Nana made a refreshing sound. After a while, gently put Rukia Kuchiki in her arms on her clothes, turned to look at the three girls Hana Retsu, and said righteously. Sister Wa, you are too much, actually bullying the cute Rukia-chan like this. And Nell, Tia, you two too. If I wasn't in a hurry to return to the world to help, I would have to teach you a lesson here. Quote. Hurry up and put on your clothes. The faces of the three girls were all red. After hearing this, they stood up with some effort and found their own clothes from the pile of clothes and put them on. Kia's face was a little red, and he quickly took out the remaining clothes and ran to Rukia. Rukia, these are your clothes, you put them on first, and when the world is settled, I will help you teach them a lesson. Kie, you be asterisk 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 d, don't come over. Rukia Kuchiki looked at Kie with a red face, and there was a hint of crying in her voice. She was really exhausted now. Now seeing Kia's figure, she felt an inexplicable pain all over her body. Hee, let me help you put on your clothes. Oh 3. After some twists and turns, after putting on clothes, Kie snapped his fingers and was about to break the yellow barrier. Rukia Kuchiki said with a red face, wait until I recover some strength before removing the barrier. I really have no strength now. After a while, bang. The yellow opaque barrier was broken. The 4 girls with slightly rosy faces walked out of it, and their steps seemed a little unnatural. But Nailu and Tia were Arrancar Manos Grande after all, and their recovery speed was very fast. Soon they walked back to nature. Seeing this, Rukia Kuchiki's beautiful eyes flashed with envy, and she couldn't help looking at Unohana Retsu. Captain Unohana Retsu, your Kaido is useless for this kind of injury. She now felt that every piece of her skin was painful. It was not painful, but the kind of numbness. Hearing this, Unohana Retsu couldn't help but hold her face with both hands, and savored it obsessively. Rukia-chan, don't you feel that this pain is very comfortable? Rukia Kuchiki's face suddenly turned black, and she gritted her teeth and said, Captain Unohana Retsu, I'm sorry, I don't have your hobby now. She felt that there was no third person in the entire Soul Society who would get excited after being injured like Unohana Retsu and Zaraki Kenpachi. Then wait, I'll treat you a little. Unohana Retsu pointed her right hand at Rukia Kuchiki. Kaido. Nelu turned into little Nelu, jumped onto Nanaya's shoulder, and asked curiously. Nelu, don't you need to fight now? Yeah, almost. Nelu nodded slightly. After nearly a month, he devoured a huge amount of spiritual power and created 9 Vasto Lord-level tailed beasts. Now, he finally controlled these 9-tailed beasts. In other words, he is now a Jinchuriki who has sealed the 9-tailed beasts, and they are all perfect Jinchuriki, and he can use the power of any tailed beast. However, to reach the 10 tails Jinchuriki, he still needs to rely on the power of the Gedo statue. But he doesn't plan to waste time here. God knows what the fight is like in the real world, he has to go back to see the situation, after all, that is his home. Wow, Niah, you are so powerful. Xiao Ni looked at Niah with admiration. She saw Niah with her own eyes, step by step, subduing 9 Vasto Lord-level Manos Grande. The first few tailed beasts were okay. Although they had various abilities, their strength was only at the entry level of Vasto Lord. But starting from 5 tails Kokuo, each of the following tailed beasts has extremely powerful strength. Especially the last 9 tails Kurama. It is a terrible monster that can be called a natural disaster. It seems that the meaning of existence is destruction and killing. The body that covers the sky and the sun is even more ferocious. In Nell's opinion, the former Hueco Mundo Emperor Baragan Luzenbaron could not beat the 9 tails demon fox. If Kie had not subdued many tailed beasts, had experience, and regained some rationality under the 9 tails posture, everyone would have died here. You are so powerful. The voice of admiration heard Kia's ears, but it inexplicably made him think about it and recalled what happened just now. Tiantian has long blue hair and red lines on her face. She originally looked very cold. But her body was covered with fine sweat. Her face was flushed and she looked at herself. Kie, you are so powerful. Color is emptiness, emptiness is color. Kie silently repeated several times, and then he barely suppressed the restlessness in his heart. Tear Harabel came over. Compared to Nell, she was more curious about Nanaya's current strength. Nana, you have subdued 9 Arrancar Manos Grande now. Can you tell me how strong you are now? Quote. Nana thought for a moment. In fact, the 9-tailed beasts did not bring him much bonus. At best, they only added various abilities and spiritual power. It can only be regarded as icing on the cake. Only when the 9-tailed beasts merged into one and became the 10 tails sacred tree and was sealed in his body, his strength would increase dramatically. But since Tear Harabel asked, Nanaia did not intend to hide it and said, I don't know either, but I can try. How to try? Who can beat you now? Tear Harabel was a little confused. But the next second she knew what Nanaia meant. Boom. Reiatsu exploded as if it was pressed down by the sky. From Nanaya's body, terrifying red Reiatsu burst out, like the red aurora flashing in the sky, and like the scorching sun pressing down. The purple eyes were faintly visible, like a high god, staring coldly below. After the white and red mask appeared on Nanaya's face, the red Reiatsu was further enhanced. The piercing evil was like the tyranny from the abyss, as if seeing the figure of 9 tails, a demon fox, roaring and screaming, wanting to destroy everything. The surrounding ground could not withstand this level of Reiatsu, and it broke at a speed visible to the naked eye, forming many huge cracks. The white tree trunks around were even more B***************** G. Open black lens bracket 014501503 Philu 182,491,271. Tear Harabel's pupils dilated, her knees bent uncontrollably, and she felt the incoming Reiatsu in disbelief. The eruption of Reiatsu alone made her feel an extremely heavy and irresistible pressure. You know, she is the third Espada, and her strength is the best in the whole world, but she is still suppressed and can't breathe. Her thin waist gradually bent down, and sweat oozed from her wheat-colored skin. When Kie came to his senses, he looked at Tear Haribel in surprise, and he actually posed in such a shameful and seductive posture. So, he subconsciously reached out and pressed the back of Tear Haribel's head and rubbed it, muttering to himself, Tia, I didn't expect you to be so open, everyone is watching. Tear Haribel was originally a relatively indifferent queen, but after hearing this, she couldn't help blushing. She turned her face away and gritted her teeth. Are you kidding me? It's obvious that you forced me down. Quote. Although he refuted Niah, Tear Haribel felt his heart pounding, abnormally. Growing up in Hueco Mundo, Arrancar Menos Grande itself does not have much human shame. The law of the jungle is the main theme here. Nana is not only handsome, but also so strong, and can make himself so comfortable. Although I am the third Espada, it is not impossible to be his maid. Tear Haribel thought silently. Yes, whatever. Niah agreed casually, rubbed Tear Haribel's hair again, and said with a smile. In short, everyone should be prepared first, there will definitely be a big battle next. Tear Haribel's face flushed. Under the tyrannical Reiatsu, he raised his head with difficulty, looked at Niah, and gritted his teeth and said. Nana, how long are you going to suppress me? Chapter 122. The situation is critical, the nine-tailed beasts invade the world. Chapter 122. The situation is critical, the nine-tailed beasts invade the present world. Kuchiki classmate, Nell, Tia, Captain Unohana Retsu, you are all back. Inoue Orihime looked at them with surprise, but when they approached, Inoue Orihime blinked in confusion. Nell, Tia, why do you look a lot prettier? After all, she was just a high school student, still very innocent, and did not notice that the two girls had a touch of mature charm on their faces. Orihime-chan, let me tell you. Nell saw that she was going alone, smiled, ran over and hugged Inoue Orihime. Her personality was also very innocent, so she cared about Inoue Orihime very well. She was ready to share the comfortable things with Inoue Orihime as soon as she opened her mouth. Rukia Kuchiki's face flushed immediately, and she coughed hard. Nailu, don't say anything for now, we have to go to the real world to help. She didn't dare to tell Inoue Orihime, otherwise what should we do with another sister? Nailu nodded in confusion. At this time, Kurosaki Ichigo supported his body with his right hand, stood up with difficulty, and looked at Kie with murderous intent. Damn guy, I will kill you sooner or later. The voice was not the original tone. It was more like electronic music. Kie was stunned for a moment, and thought about it before reacting, and suddenly realized, you are Shubai, but why don't you wear a mask? Hearing this, Shubai wanted to kill this B********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* you opened. Quote, quote. Hiei thought hard for a long time, and then he remembered what happened before. Under his Nine Tails form, Kurosaki Ichigo, the unlucky kid, had his potential stimulated, and he pulled out Hōgyoku to take the beating for him. Hōgyoku was even more unlucky, and was pulled out by Kurosaki Ichigo and beaten half to death. He finally couldn't stand it anymore, and activated the form of the bullhead hollow. Then, he was beaten up again. At that time, I had some rationality, and I didn't hit him too hard, just smashed the guy's mask to pieces. No, it seems that he made him cry. Hōgyoku's electronic music has a crying tone. Ahem, cough, you go back quickly. Hiei coughed twice, and Rinnegan fluctuated slightly, directly hitting Hōgyoku back. He was not used to talking to such a victim. Kr. Before Hōgyoku finished speaking, Kurosaki Ichigo's consciousness had been restored. He looked around in confusion and asked, "It's over. I don't have to be beaten." The hollow in Kurosaki Ichigo's body suddenly jumped into a rage, and in the consciousness space, it waved the pure white Zanpakuto wildly. "You two bastards, don't let me find a chance, otherwise I will kill both of you." These two bastards. The former dragged him out as a scapegoat and was beaten. The latter beat him up without thinking about it. Nanai coughed and said, "Don't think too much. Go find Kuretsuchi Mayuri. I hope this guy hasn't been beaten to death by me in the form of Nine Tails for life. Go after him, wolves." Above Karakura Town, Coyote Stark spoke lazily, and an amazing Reiatsu burst out of his body. At the same time, the image changed for the first time. The mask of the hollow is located above the eye socket, similar to the frame of glasses, and light gray hair appears on the forearms and calves, similar to wolf hair. Holding a musket in each hand, like a hunter hunting wolves. After pointing the two muskets at Kyoraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitaki on the opposite side, Stark scratched his head with the handle of the gun and said nonchalantly, "You two, do you really want to fight me seriously? It seems that you have no chance of winning." Kyoraku Shunsui's expression was no longer lazy. Jashiro Yukitaki's expression was even more solemn. The two glanced at the situation around them, and their hearts sank to the extreme. It was not good. The situation of all parties fell to the bottom. The outcome is still uncertain. Kyoraku Shunsui said in a deep voice. The situation was too bad, and he had already made preparations for Bankai. Jashiro Yukitake was the same. Then there's nothing we can do. Stark sighed, pointed his rifle at the two men, and said with a little helplessness, "Unlimited Sero reloads." Instantly, a dazzling blue light burst out from the muzzle of the gun, and in just 1 second, hundreds of blue Sero were shot out. Although Stark looked casual, his power was particularly terrifying when he took action. Thousands of Sero. Hiroku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitake's faces changed. Sui-Feng looked at her right arm, which was only a skeleton, and her face was extremely ugly. She almost bit her silver teeth to pieces. Slajaj. She had gone through a lot of hardships to defeat the Manos Grande named Geo Weiger. She had planned to attack Baragan. But she never thought that this former emperor of Hueco Mundo really possessed destructive power. The ability is called aging. Her right hand was only touched by him, and the flesh turned into ashes in an instant, leaving only the rotten white bones. Female Shinigami, it is useless to resist. What I control is the most terrifying power in the world. Even Shinigami cannot resist aging. Baragan said with a gloomy face. You are quite strong after defeating my subordinate officer. Quote. But that's all. Next, I won't show mercy. He then pulled out his soul-slaying sword and said. Turn into bones. Ryūjin Jakka, seal, complete. In midair, Aizen Sōsuke, who had revealed his whereabouts, looked at the captain and said lightly. Kill him, Wandaweiss. At this time, Wandaweiss had completely entered the posture of the fire-extinguishing prince, swallowing all the high-temperature flames around him. Forcibly sealed the Ryūjin Jakka of old man Yamamoto. Hearing Aizen Sōsuke's order, he rushed up without hesitation. Humph, Aizen, do you think that I will be helpless if you seal my soul-slaying sword? Old man Yamamoto snorted coldly and took off his clothes. He clenched his fists and punched out with just one punch, and smashed most of the body of the fire-extinguishing prince. 2 punches down. The body of the fire-extinguishing prince was completely blown to pieces. But after the fire-extinguishing prince's body was blown to pieces, violent flames burst out from his body. What? Old man Yamamoto's face changed drastically. I won't explain it to you, Captain General. Aizen Sōsuke said calmly. Compared to you, there is a more troublesome guy coming. I have to solve the trouble here as soon as possible. Because of the human from Soul Society, he had to take the initiative to speed up the progress of his plan. This made him a little dissatisfied. Because in his opinion, as the final moment of hundreds of years of planning, he should be in control of the overall situation and be in a safe position. But now, everything is destroyed, and he even has to choose to take action. It's all over. Aizen Sōsuke watched the flames erupt calmly. In the body of the fire-extinguishing prince, the flames soared into the sky, and the flames rose, as if to engulf the entire Karakura Town. But after the flames expanded to a certain limit, they suddenly shrank, gradually compressed into a point, and exploded in a very small range. After a deafening roar, a large pit appeared on the spot, full of burn marks and even magma. Old man Yamamoto fell in it, his body charred. Aizen Zong, money earned, Yusuke walked over, looked at the charred old man Yamamoto, slowly pulled out his Kyōka Suigetsu and said. Captain General, I won't say anything about leaving you alive, as a member of Soul Society's history, let me send you off. Quote. When the situation was critical. In the sky, a black crack appeared. 9 pairs of arms like ferocious beasts, with claws, hooves, and wings, stretched out from the darkness and grabbed the edge of the crack. With a sharp tearing sound. The black crack was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. The faces of Shinigami and Manos Grande present changed drastically at the same time. Shinigami believed that this was because Hueco Mundo had received reinforcements, and the situation would further fall into despair. Manos Grande was a little confused. I didn't hear about any support. Just that little wife money, all taken out. In full view of the public. 1-tailed Shukaku, 2-tailed Nekomata, 3-tailed Isobu, 4-tailed Son Goku, 5-tailed Kokuo, 6-tailed Seiken, 7-tailed Chome, 8-tailed Gyuki, 9-tailed Kurama. There are 9-tailed beasts, or 9 Arankar Manos Grande, at the same time, poked his head out of the darkness. Let out a roar that shook the earth. Chapter 123. Soul Society's Savior, the Evolved Ghetto Statue. Chapter 123 Soul Society's Savior, the Evolved Ghetto Statue. No way, 9 more. Looking at the 9-tailed beasts tearing through space in the sky. Hiroku Shunsui's face was ugly, and he clenched his soul-slashing sword. He felt like he had eaten a whole root of Coptis chinensis in his heart, and he could hardly speak. After Aizen Sōsuke intervened, the situation on the Shinigami side was already precarious. Now there are 9 more powerful backups. In his opinion, the strongest tailed beasts are not weaker than Stark on the opposite side. Among them, the 9-tailed demon fox, the tyrannical Reiatsu that erupted was even stronger than Stark Baragan and the like. How can this war be fought? Jashiro Yukitake's face was also ugly. But he did not look at the tailed beasts, but looked in the direction of old man Yamamoto. Teacher, Aizen Sōsuke, he shouted out, looking at old man Yamamoto on the ground far below in disbelief. His teacher, the strongest Shinigami in the history of Soul Society, fell to the ground in a pit with a weak breath. He was holding the strongest flame-type soul-slashing sword, but his body seemed to be burned to charcoal. He looked like he could die at any time. Since everything happened at the same time, the Shinigami present came to their senses and found that the captain had fallen. No way, the captain was defeated. Quote. How could Aizen defeat the captain? 583 inches. The faces of all the Shinigami present changed drastically. Even Niah, who had once turned Soul Society upside down, could only flee when facing the captain. Unexpectedly, he fell under Aizen's sword. The old man is too careless. Hiroku Shunsui clenched his fists. If I had known earlier, I should have reminded the old man and let him listen to Niah's opinion. At this moment, he was extremely regretful. The surging regret almost washed away his rationality. Just like what the human boy said, the captain's 1,000-year invincibility had made him careless, which led to Aizen Sōsuke's conspiracy. If the old man could be more vigilant, the battle would never turn out like this. Hiroku Shunsui turned his head and looked at Jashiro Yukitake with a wry smile. There is no other way, we have to quickly notify the members of the Zero Division. Quote. The captain fell. The captain was in a tough fight. All the vice captains were seriously injured. The situation couldn't be worse, and they couldn't defeat Aizen Sōsuke. Zero Squad. Jashiro Yukitake's face was tangled. When they came to the real world, they didn't think about the possibility of losing, so they didn't notify Zero Squad. But leaving now means handing over the entire Karakura Town to Aizen Sōsuke. But that would take a full 100,000 souls. Since they hadn't seen Niah Hollow, they didn't know that the nine-tailed beasts in the sky were actually reinforcements from Niah. But they hadn't seen it, but Sui-Feng had seen it. Looking at the nine-tailed beasts that were about to rush out, her beautiful eyes showed surprise, and she said loudly, everyone, those Arrancar are not enemies, they are all hollows in Niah's body, he came to support us. Quote. Hearing this, the Shinigami present were immediately cheered up. Nanai, that human Takai, great, that guy is a human, but he is essentially a monster. Captain General Bankai couldn't take him down, if he can come here, he will definitely be able to turn the situation around. He went to Hueco Mundo, could these be his captives? The Shinigami were overjoyed. After experiencing a series of blows, they were all in despair. Unexpectedly, there was a silver lining. Vast O Lord, Aizen Sōsuke stopped his movements and looked at the nine-tailed beast, with a gleam of light in his eyes. The Arrancar Manos Grande, which has never been seen before, has various properties, interesting. As he said this, he pointed his right hand at the nine-tailed beasts and said lightly. Fiery lightning howl. He abandoned almost 90% of the chanting, but even so, he still created a terrifying golden thunder. Seeing this scene, the three tails Isobu, one of the nine-tailed beasts, roared and rushed into the world first. He turned around and used the tortoise shell covered with spikes behind him to block the thunder. Boom. The thunder hit the tortoise shell, leaving a crack of only half a meter on the tortoise shell. The next second, the nine-tailed beasts were furious and opened their mouths at the same time. The surging spiritual power gathered and launched their strongest attack as tailed beasts. 9 huge black spheres continued to appear. When a certain limit was reached, 9 heavyweight tailed beast cannons blasted directly at Aizen Sōsuke. Quote. 9 tailed beast cannons exploded at the same time, and the range and shock wave of the explosion almost covered the surrounding streets. Just after the explosion, everyone's eyes turned to the center of the explosion. Because this attack did not distinguish between friend and foe. In the smoke and dust, the charred old man Yamamoto staggered to his feet and gritted his teeth. Human kid, are you going to kill me too? If he hadn't run fast, he would not have died in the hands of Aizen Sōsuke, but would have been almost killed by the tailed beast cannons of the nine-tailed beasts. Old man, don't pretend when you're like this. A clear voice came from behind the nine-tailed beasts. In full view, Nanai's figure walked out of the black crack. It can be vaguely seen that the ghetto statue behind it, which covered the sky and the sun, is more powerful than before. At this time, the ghetto statue burst out with golden chains on its body, tightly wrapped around the nine-tailed beasts, as if locking them up. After looking around, Kie couldn't help but smack his lips and said, before this, old man, can you tell me why the situation has become like this? All the captain-level strongmen were injured, and the vice-captain was almost beaten to death. Isn't it too much than I imagined? In the original work, the Shinigami side had the upper hand, and 90% of the Manos Grande were killed, leaving only Aizen Sōsuke and a few others. 014501503 Filu 182,491,571. And now, all the Shinigami present were injured, and they looked half dead. Hearing Kia's ridicule, the old man Yamamoto, who had endured the self-explosion of the fire-extinguishing prince, was so angry that he spurted out a mouthful of blood. He was not injured. He was stabbed twice in the heart. The corners of his mouth twitched for a long time, but he couldn't say a word. It was really embarrassing. As the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, I was really hit by this human kid's words. Because of carelessness, I almost lost my life. Human. Baragan showed a surprised expression. Never thought that a mere human, the burst of Reiatsu, would make him, the former king of Hueco Mundo, feel dangerous. Just solved it together. Baragan snorted coldly, stepped on the foot, and quickly rushed towards Nanaya's figure and said. A mere human, don't waste my time. He held the soul-slaying sword stained with black aura in his hand, and slashed at Nanaya's figure fiercely. As long as this knife was cut, the body will instantly age to the state of dying. But Niah also found his figure. Rinnegan flashed, and a strong repulsive force burst out from his hand. Zhou Yin said coldly. The king of Hueco Mundo, you really dare to say that? The invisible repulsive force spread ruthlessly in all directions with Niah as the center point. The moment he came into contact with the repulsive force, Baragan's face changed drastically, and the body of the skeleton seat began to tremble at this moment. His figure was blown away and crashed into the ground with a loud bang. The entire ground was shaking. Several houses around were blown into pieces. Sui-Feng couldn't help but cover his mouth and looked at the figure of the seventh master in surprise. No way, that guy is very. Chapter 124. The Worship of Sui-Feng, the Wheel Tomb and the Prison. Chapter 124. Sui-Feng's Worship, Wheel Tomb Bianyu. Quote. Sui-Feng looked at the figure in the sky. A rare trace of worship appeared in her eyes. She had just fought with Baragan and could confirm that the other party was really strong. In the posture of not returning to the blade, she was beaten without any ability to fight back. Even one of her arms was only cut by the opponent's soul-slashing sword, and the flesh on it was aged into ashes. Unexpectedly, Hiei didn't even move anything, just a glance, and the opponent was blasted from the sky to the ground. Quote. It's worthy of being a human who can fight with the captain. That guy has become stronger again, and the captain may not be able to defeat him. The Shinigami were ecstatic. When they were in danger, Hiei turned the tide like a god descending from the sky. In their eyes, he was simply a god who came to help suddenly. If it weren't for the wrong occasion, they would have wanted to set off a few firecrackers to celebrate. What is that? Aizen Sōsuke frowned and stared at the ghetto statue behind Niah in confusion. That guy actually gives me a sense of danger. The ghetto statue, which looked like a dead tree, burst out a golden chain from its chest, like a bridle, restraining the nine-tailed beasts. The pressure brought by the latter was even greater than that of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni in the Shikai posture. Troublesome human. Aizen Sōsuke's eyes flickered and looked at Baragan below. 131,313. What kind of weird ability is that? Baragan stood up on the ground with a livid face. Although the violent repulsion just now blasted him to the ground, it did not cause him fatal damage. But even so, it made him particularly angry. After all, he was once the king of Hueco Mundo, but he ended up in such an embarrassing situation. In anger, Baragan clenched the soul-slaying sword, his face was livid, his voice was gloomy, and he burst out with a dark Reiatsu. Decay. Skull Emperor. Instantly, the black air of aging burst out. His image also changed with the return of the blade. No longer the original gloomy old man. He wore a multi-layered crown on his head, his face and body turned into a skull, his feet wore boots, his whole body was covered with black flames, and a long silver chain was chained from the corner of the crown. Holding a black double-edged axe, he looked like a traditional European Shinigami. Cold and terrifying. It seemed that he would use the chain to hook away people's souls at any time, representing the end of human life. Seeing this scene, Sui-Feng's eyes flashed with cold light, and without hesitation, he waved his only remaining left hand and said in a cold voice. Bankai. Jakaho Reikoben. She also entered the Bankai posture. The soul-slaying sword Suzumaki, which was originally like the queen bee's sting, turned into a slender, golden missile. Sui-Feng turned his eyes and looked at Niah, gritting his teeth and said, Niah, leave this guy to me, you just focus on dealing with Aizen. The most troublesome enemy on the scene must be Aizen Sōsuke. After all, he defeated the captain general. And the only strong person who can fight is Niah, so she does not allow anyone to disturb Niah's battle. Although I don't like my Bankai very much, there is no way, let you die under this blow. Sui-Feng's eyes flashed with cold light, and the end of the missile was aimed at Bailaran, who looked like a skeleton Shinigami. Hieraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitaki thought the same thing. Without saying a word, he launched a fierce attack on Stark. Stark was helpless. He didn't want to interfere with Niah, but there was no way, so he could only keep pulling the trigger of the double-handed musket. All the Shinigami present were excited and fought hard against the enemy in front of them. Hiei scratched his head with a strange look in his eyes. Are you sure you don't need help? I feel like you are all a little weak. Hearing this, the Shinigami present almost spit out blood. They tried their best to help Hiei fight against the enemy, but they didn't expect Hiei to think they were weak. It made people want to cry. But Hiei really thought so. Especially when he saw Hitsugaya Toshiro, who was almost seriously injured, in the distance. The opponent was Grimmjow and the Beast God. Facing two powerful enemies, Hitsugaya Toshiro was already covered in blood. Don't underestimate me. Sui-Feng gritted his teeth, wrapped the silver bar that fixed the missile around the tall building, and suddenly shot out his Bankai. The golden missile was extremely fast, like a golden light across the sky. It almost instantly arrived in front of Baragan. Then, it exploded. Boom. A deafening explosion sounded. The flames and black smoke billowed up, as if the former king of Hueco Mundo had been killed. But, ridiculous woman. In the black smoke, Baragan walked out and took a Bankai, but he was not injured. Even the clothes on his body were not damaged at all. The skull-like eyes stared at Sui-Feng, and said condescendingly. I am the emperor of Hueco Mundo. If those two guys fought me, they would be fine. Who are you? He was referring to Aizen Sōsuke and Niah. Impossible, Bankai didn't work. Sui-Feng's eyes were a little absent-minded. His Suzumaki has the ability to kill with 2 hits. Jakuho Reikoban after Bankai has the ability to kill with 1 hit. I am the emperor of Hueco Mundo. Baragan snorted coldly, stepped on the ground, and came to Sui-Feng in an instant. On his body, rolling black mold spread and attacked. 0. Ask for flowers. At the same time, he swung the black double-edged axe, and slashed down with rolling black mist. Sui-Feng's face changed, and he used Shunpo without hesitation. In a flash, he left the high-rise building where he was standing. Shua. The black double-edged axe slashed over. The tall building was first split in 2, and then gradually aged under the corrosion of the black house, turning into gravel and ash. Sui-Feng took a breath of cold air, never expecting that the other party would be so powerful after being released. Seeing that he was about to be shrouded by the black mist. So it's still too weak. Niah shook his head, stepped forward, and the ghetto statue behind him followed. As the ghetto statue chain tightened, the tailed beasts were gradually swallowed by the ghetto statue. The reiatsu of the ghetto statue became more and more terrifying. Just when the black mist was about to touch Sui-Feng, Niah's purple Rinnegan fluctuated slightly, and he said, Universal pull. The invisible gravitational force in Sui-Feng's body directly pulled the petite figure over. $71. Hearing the sound of breaking air beside his ears, Sui-Feng's eyes showed shock. The speed at which he was pulled over was faster than his Shunpo. Hiei held Sui-Feng steadily and said, I told you that you are not a match. Even if your teacher comes, he may not be able to kill the guy. Sui-Feng pouted, but did not resist. He looked around for Yoruichi. You again. Seeing Kia's rescue, Baragan's skull-like face showed anger. With a wave of his left hand, the black mold that can cause the decline of all things spread. However, roar. The ghetto statue that swallowed the 9-tailed beasts roared and slapped it hard. The palm like a dead tree touched the black mist. But in the shocked eyes of everyone, the palm of the ghetto statue seemed to be nothing, and it slapped the black mist into nothingness. Baragan's eyes widened. How is it possible? My ability is the end of all things. Quote. Why can this monster's arm ignore aging? Ha. Before he could finish his words, ghetto statue slapped him on the body and knocked him into the ground. Idiot. Old man, do you think ghetto statue will age? Hiei looked at Baragan with disdain. Even he didn't know the lifespan of ghetto statue. This is the incarnation of 10 tails, and now it is about to become 10 tails. If you have to talk about lifespan, it can almost be described as having no beginning and no end. Impossible. Baragan's face turned ferocious, and he stood up from the ground where aging disappeared, and attacked Hiei at an abnormally fast speed. The speed of the outer path demon phase was not fast, and it could not catch up with Baragan. Seeing this, Hiei sneered, and Rinnegan fluctuated again, saying coldly. Wheel Grave Beyond Factory. Chapter 125. Flirting, Absolute Zero Ice and Snow. Chapter 125 Flirting, Absolute Zero Ice and Snow. Wheel Tomb Beyond You. As Kia's voice came out, the spiritual power surged, spreading a faint wave. In the invisible moments of the crowd, the shadow under Kia's feet gradually split, forming 4 slightly darker Kie figures. Invisible, untouchable, it was as if he was in the other world. It was similar to the hollow that Kie possessed. Gradually, 4 Kie shadows appeared, holding Uchiha fans, stepping on the ground, and quickly rushed towards the attacking Baragan. Baragan was covered with black mist, dark and eerie, and the black double-edged axe like a guillotine chopped down. But before he could completely chop it off, his body was attacked by an invisible attack. Bang! Baragan's body flew backwards. Before he touched the ground, he was attacked by an unknown attack again, and fell straight from the sky to the ground. Just before being blasted into the ground, the figure was hit into the sky again. It was as if it had turned into an 870 ball. It was hit back and forth in the sky by 4 unknown figures. The Shinigami present almost popped their eyes out. Omaeda couldn't help rubbing his eyes and said dully, Are you kidding? This guy took on Captain Sui-Feng's Bankai. Madarame Makaku swallowed his saliva, turned his head to look at a Yasugawa Yumashika, and said dryly, Yumashika, why do I feel that even if Captain Zaraki goes up, he will be beaten badly? A Yasugawa Yumashika's eyelids twitched. I feel the same way. I think Captain Zaraki doesn't want to fight with Niah. Quote. As the second Espada, the former king of Hueco Mundo, who took a Baragan from Bankai, was beaten into a ball by Niah. Except for the Captain General, the rest of the captains will probably just have a few more balls. Captain Zaraki probably doesn't want to be treated as a ball either. The Shinigami side was shocked and delighted. And the Arrancar Manos Grande side was just horrified. The former king of Hueco Mundo was actually kicked like a ball. How can we fight like this? This is not even a ball. After a few seconds, Hitsugaya Toshiro couldn't help it anymore, and couldn't help looking at Niah, shouting, "Hey, human boy, can you come over and help me first?" Compared to Sui-Feng, Hiroku Shunsui, and Jashiro Yukitaki, his current situation is the most dangerous. Facing the extreme speed of Grimmjow and the violence of the mixed beast god, his Bankai was about to be broken. Only the last petal was left of the 3 big red lotuses. Hearing the voice, Hiei looked over with contempt. "Toshiro, you little brat are really useless, is this the end?" Hitsugaya Toshiro almost spit out blood. "Let's make him the worst here, okay." First, he fought with Grimmjow, and was severely injured by the opponent's Panther King Claw. It was hard to use the Ice Sky 100 Flowers Burial, but it was broken by the roar of the Fire Extinguishing Prince. Then the Chaos Beast God attacked again. "Don't talk nonsense, these 2 guys are very strong. Except for you, other captains will be useless, and I'm older than you." Hitsugaya Toshiro retorted in shame and anger. Shaking his head, Hiei looked at him with pity, turned to look at Rukia Kuchiki, and said, "Cute Rukia-chan, you go, let him see what the strongest ice-type soul-slashing sword is." Although Soul Society has always said that Hitsugaya Toshiro has the strongest ice-type soul-slaying sword and has the terrifying power to control the celestial phenomena. But Niah really didn't see the highlight. On the contrary, Rukia Kuchiki's Baishiafa, which can freeze everything in the world, is more terrifying. "I know." Rukia Kuchiki agreed and walked towards Hitsugaya Toshiro eagerly. She also wanted to try her Baishiafa. Who was stronger than Hitsugaya Toshiro's Daiguren Hiranmaru? Well, Rukia Kuchiki. Hitsugaya Toshiro was stunned for a moment, and was a little confused. He also knew Rukia Kuchiki's soul-slaying sword. Soda no Shirayuki, known as the most beautiful soul-slaying sword in Soul Society, also has the ability of ice and snow. But that sword, compared with Hiranmaru, who has the power to control the celestial phenomena, is simply not worth mentioning. Why would Niah mention her? Could it be that? Hitsugaya Toshiro thought of something and suddenly widened his eyes. Under Hitsugaya Toshiro's gaze, Rukia Kuchiki slowly drew out her soul-slaying sword and said, "Bankai, Baixia Fa." The biting white cold air filled the air, as if the figure of the ice goddess appeared again, freezing the surrounding city objects in an instant. Seeing this scene, the Shinigami present couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. It's actually Bankai. I remember Rukia Kuchiki is less than 200 years old this year. Quote. What an amazing cold, the temperature feels much colder than Captain Hitsugaya's Bankai, I feel shivering here. Really, not only the temperature has dropped, but also the appearance and clothes have changed. It's really Bankai. Hitsugaya Toshiro was a little absent-minded, but the movement of his hand did not slow down, and the soul-slaying sword swung down, and the ice and snow surged. 1,000-year ice prison. Haha. The ice pillar that penetrated the sky and the earth was formed out of thin air. The hideous-looking Chaos Beast God was frozen in the ice pillar. But then, as the Chaos Beast God exerted his strength, cracks gradually spread out of the ice pillar, covering the entire ice pillar, and it shattered with a bang. Seeing this scene, the ice beauty slowly waved the soul-slaying sword and said indifferently, "Captain Hitsugaya, get out of the way." As soon as the voice fell, countless cold air formed a blue disk in the sky. At the same time, the ground surged with cold light, cold and piercing, and connected with the sky disk. The moment the two touched, a shocking cold air burst out from the blue light. Even though he was holding Daiguren Hiranmaru, Hitsugaya Toshiro, who felt the cold, still took a breath of cold air and retreated quickly, fearing that he would be covered by the blue cold light. When the cold light dissipated, the cold color flickered, revealing a large area of ice and snow, crystal clear ice, as if he had come to the country of ice and snow. Streets, houses, traffic lights, high-rise buildings. All became crystal clear, as if the material had changed, as if he had come to the world of ice and snow. The beast god that was roaring fiercely at first was now motionless, and his whole body was crystal clear, like a mighty ice sculpture of hockey. Subconsciously, Rukia Kuchiki was ready to swing the blade to break the surrounding ice sculptures. Tier Harabel came over quickly, stopped Rukia Kuchiki's action, and said to his three subordinates. Apache, Ross, grandson, stop it, there is no need to fight these Shinigami. The three female Arancars were stunned for a moment, then their beautiful eyes widened, and they ran over quickly, circling around Tier Harabel, and couldn't help saying. Master Harabel, do you really have a good relationship with these Shinigami? You look much prettier. They are enemies. Hey, Master Harabel, why is your neck so red? Are you threatened by them? Bang, bang, bang. Tier Harabel retracted his fist, covered his neck with a high collar, and said with a slightly ruddy face. I have a good relationship with that guy Niah, there is no need to fight him, after all, that guy is still quite strong. What aspect is strong? The ice beauty couldn't help but grit her teeth and glared at Niah in the distance. 2.5 The beauty trick is used well. Niah coughed twice. The Shinigami couldn't help but twitch when they saw this. They were fighting for their lives. They were flirting over there. People's grief was not the same. But they were relieved. In such a tense situation, they were still in the mood to flirt, which meant that the situation was not critical. Damn it, don't ignore me. It was different from the joy of the Shinigami. Seeing that no one cared about him, Grimmjow was furious and swung the blue, sharp Panther King Claw to attack quickly. Hitsugaya Toshiro's face changed. But before she could make a move, the ice beauty who wanted to experiment with the soul-slashing sword met Grimmjow first and said coldly. Absolute zero. In the moment of speaking, the temperature around Rukia Kuchiki dropped rapidly, the airflow surged, and ice began to form in all directions. But the fastest temperature drop was still Rukia Kuchiki's body.